Live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So I got to tell you, I love the people I work with. When I say morons, I mean this with all the love and respect in my heart. But I'm thinking that I work with some morons, man, I'll tell you. I mean, this trade, and Willie, I love you. Derek, I love you. Frazier, who's still back there in the back, I love you. But this fakakta trade that Willie, and I'm not going to say Derek wanted to make it because it kind of felt like Derek was on the fence a little bit as far as, the trade with Buffalo was concerned. But then Frazier said that Derek doesn't think Josh Allen is like the quarterback, which is wild to me. And Frazier says that he doesn't think that. I mean, you guys. I think the trade was, and I didn't even see this Bleacher Report story, and I'm not starting on it, but I just, apparently the suggestion for the trade was Buffalo trades 28, 60, 128, and their first next year for 7. And I'm like, that's a terrible trade. Like when Caroline brought that up, I'm like, oh yeah, I was in my car, and I was like, that is a horrendous trade. And then Willie was like, I would do that in a heartbeat. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. It's like they need picks. Not every 7th overall pick is worked out. Well, no, duh. But the 7th overall pick gives you a much, 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 much better chance at nabbing an elite player. And I don't know if you guys sit there and think, the reason why the Titans got bad between 2021 and 2023 was because they didn't have David Quessenberry and they didn't have David Long Jr. and they didn't have, if that's why you think they got bad, or if you think they got bad because they traded A.J. Brown. Because my gut tells me that you all think the reason why is because they traded A.J. Brown. And that is what elite players do for your team. And this is where I want to start today. And by the way, let me just throw out there the Preds playoff preview show, 4 o'clock today. Max Hers will be here with me for that. Roman Yossi at 4 o'clock. Andrew Burnett at 4:30. Preds and Vancouver. We're very excited about that. But I want to start on this. I am not here to cry over spilt milk. But the Titans have made a bunch of stupid decisions over the last 2 years. And the line of demarcation for me was when they fired John Robinson in first place at 7-5 in the middle of the 2022 season. You want to fire him at the end of the year, that's fine. I probably wouldn't have done it. I probably would have given him another draft in another year. That's just me. But to fire him in the middle of the season the way they did was so insanely stupid. So insanely stupid that I thought there was an HR issue there, right? Like when he got fired, I'm like, okay, what did this guy do? Did he sexually harass somebody in the office? Was he going to the supply closet and taking too many legal pads home? Because, when you're general manager of a football team, there's a lot of things you could do that get you in trouble. There's a lot of, oh, yeah, he took tickets and blah, blah. Like, there's all kinds of things. And after about a couple days, I found out that wasn't the case. They just fired him because they didn't think he was doing a good job. And I thought, oh, my God. This is what the stupid teams do. This is what the Clevelands do. The teams we laugh at. That's what it's just incomprehensible how stupid that is. But I'm actually going to take it a step further back. Ever since Ryan Tannehill threw the 3rd interception in the Cincinnati playoff game, it feels like every decision the Titans have made has been But the A.J. Brown trade was a terrible decision. The decision not to bring back David Quessenberry was a terrible decision. The fact that the Titans didn't give themselves any veteran help on the offensive line in backup roles, a la a Dennis Kelly type player going into the 2022 season was a terrible decision. Malik Willis as a backup quarterback when it was obvious he wasn't ready was a terrible decision. Firing John Robinson while you were in first place in the middle of the season was a terrible decision. Retaining Todd Downing after the Cincinnati game and that 21 season was a terrible decision. Hiring a general manager and forcing him to work with Mike Vrabel, who clearly, according to The Athletic, didn't want to work with the general manager, was a terrible idea. You know, if Mike Vrabel has made it obvious he doesn't want you to hire this general manager, then you've got a choice to make. Like, you've got a solid choice to make. And I am so tired of all these bad decisions. A guard with the 11th overall pick. And I'm so tired of bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And every time they make one of these bad decisions, they have to explain themselves because nobody else, no other team in the league would do that. Nobody in the league would give Aaron Brewer a second-round tender. But Jared, our 270-pound center, you don't understand. Nah, I think I got it. And so, I got to be honest. It is seriously time for the Titans to stop trying to think outside the box. It's time for the Titans to stop trying to think they're smarter than everybody else. And it's time for the Titans just to do the simple thing. And the simple thing for me is to draft an elite player, or I should say an elite prospect. Because, again, I think a lot of these guys fail because of bad coaching, bad situations, bad attitudes, things like that. But they need to draft an elite prospect with the 7th pick in this year's draft. You want to trade back to 8 with Atlanta because you know who Atlanta's going to take, and you know that's fine. But to me, I look at 8 guys in this draft. Some people include 9. Some people maybe have less. But to me, there are 8 elite players. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, and Dallas Turner. And at none of those positions do the Titans have what I would consider a foundational player. But Jared, this team needs depth. This team needs stars. This team needs stars, and they need stars at important positions. I was thinking about this in my head. How many elite players do the Tennessee Titans have? I mean elite, top of the league players. I'd argue 1. L'Jarius Sneed, and he has bad knees. That's the one guy. To me, Simmons has got a step to go. He's not Chris Jones. He wasn't what Aaron Donald was. He wasn't those guys. He's good, but he doesn't wreck the game the way that those other guys do. So to me, it's 1. Sneed. A legitimate foundational player at a premium position who is elite right now and in their prime. And so where I sit with the draft 1 week from tonight, all I'm asking for is that the Titans make a pick that makes at least a modicum of sense and brings back a foundational player at a premium position. And I will say that Simmons is a foundational player on this team. I just don't think he's top of the top in the NFL. I don't think he's a top 5 defensive lineman in the NFL. But as far as foundational players, guys that are in their prime, that will be on this team 4 years from now, you've got 2 bona fide good ones. Simmons and Sneed. And in the case of Simmons, he's probably 1 tick from being great. And in the case of Sneed, he is great, but he's got the knees. So if you want to take Joe Alt, and I like Joe Alt, you want to take Joe Alt, do it. Because that is a foundational pillar player at a premium position that you can take and you can put him on your team, and as an elite prospect, you can develop him into an elite player. You want to take Dallas Turner? Do it. If your scouts are telling you they think Dallas Turner is the next Javon Curse, you do it. Mark Dominic has his pants down for Brock Bowers. I'm fine with that. Again, Rand Carthon said at the Combine, we got to get some guys to put the ball in the paint. I watched Brock Bowers at Georgia. He puts the ball in the paint. All these other guys are okay players. Like, Ridley's a good player. He's not an elite player. And he's 29 years old. And when it comes back to the bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, at some point it has to stop. Even the moves they made this offseason, now I think Cushenberry was a solid decision, but even the moves they made this offseason were questioned, right? Mike Sando had that piece in The Athletic where they called the Calvin Ridley deal bad business. And an unnamed league executive said the Titans didn't have a plan. Well, instead of taking a player and having to have a press conference where you can't tell us what position the guy's going to play, like they did last year, or having a press conference where you have to tell the media, please, media, be positive on these picks we made. Can we just make the simple choice this year? Can we just take one of the elite players in this draft and draft them? If you draft Brock Bowers, for instance, with the 7th overall pick, is there really any question as to what'd you see in him? You know what you saw in him. The guy's freaking good. That's what. He's a matchup nightmare. He can catch a football. He can run with the ball in his hands. He was an elite player in the SEC. There's not a lot of question there. Can they do that this year? Can they finally get some players that I call the players that you can't trade for? Nobody's trading Josh Allen. Nobody's trading Mahomes. You can't get Joe Burrow right now. You can't get Jamar Chase. Those are the players that are so good that teams are not interested in trading. You pick up the phone and say, I'd like to talk Jamar Chase, and the phone gets, immediately gets hung up. You don't have any of those players. Again, the best player on your team, you traded for with a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft. So can we make the simple choice and not have to outthink the room and not have to explain to everybody this super secret reasoning that nobody else understands but me? Can we pass on that? Can we just draft a good player this year? That's where we're starting. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025, TD at 3 o'clock. And then the Predators playoff preview show right here on 1025 The Game at 4 o'clock. We kick it off with Roman Yossi. Coming up next, I like Joe Alt. I want Joe Alt. But I was surprised by something Bill Polian said, even though I think he'd be on board with Joe Alt at 7. And we'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Again, that's 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in today. Hey, this week's Nashville's best deal is Prince's Hot Chicken, the original and iconic hot chicken joint. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. The gift card is only good for the Tanger outlets in Antioch and inside Assembly Food Hall in downtown Nashville.
if you have a chance to draft a left tackle in the top 10, by all means, take it. They play the longest. They play at a high rate for a long time. We haven't talked about a high rate of blue production, but think about it this way when you consider all positions. The average number of blue years for Hall of Famers, excluding quarterbacks and wide receivers, so the best of the best of the best, the average number of blue years is 6. So that means that the guy you're drafting, even in the top 10, unless he's a quarterback or you hit on a wide receiver, you're probably going to get 6 blue years from him. So that's a tremendous buy, particularly if you're getting either a left or right tackle. In this day and age, both tackles are the same. They have to pass protect.
That's right.
So there's no real distinction.
There you go. That was Bill Polian talking about, hey, left tackle, that's a big deal. By the way, am I crazy in this? When he keeps talking about blue years, like, I don't know specifically, like, is it crazy that I've never heard that term before, but I think I know exactly what he's talking about?
I never really quite heard it like that before.
But you know what he's talking about too,
like
right?
Blue chip years?
Yeah, like the best of the best of the best years of their career. So like right now, Simmons would be in his blue years, Snead would be in his blue years, and Ridley might be coming down off the blue years a little bit. Spears should be hitting his blue years, so on and so forth. So he tells you right there, hey, if you can get blue years out of one of these tackles, that's good. But I was shocked listening to Polian. Again, that was SiriusXM NFL Radio. I was shocked listening to Polian, a Hall of Fame general manager, for those of you in the text line that are sure to bitch about Bill Polian's credentials. But I was shocked when he was talking about what teams in the top 10 look for and how many things he puts ahead of left tackle. Here's what Polian said.
Well, as a GM, you go through a process. When you're in the top 10, you want to pick one of the following. A quarterback, if he merits it, if he can lead you to the promised land. 2, someone who scores touchdowns, a running back, a wide receiver, somebody who can carry your team. 3, a person who can dominate the game on the defensive line of scrimmage, and that would include an edge rusher and a 3-4. 4, a guy who turns the ball over in the secondary, meaning a dominant corner who's got ball skills. And then 5, if all else fails, a left tackle, if one who is there who you can anticipate will be a blue player throughout his career.
Okay. I mean, that's a little surprising to me from this standpoint. Left tackles are really important. But Polian saying, hey, quarterback number 1, touchdown scorers number 2, which does go in line with the Brian Callahan elite touchdown scorer as opposed to elite non-touchdown scorer. Sacker 3, interceptor 4, tackle 5. And all I ever hear about is people that say like, oh, Jared, this team has so many holes, I don't even know where to start. Well, if this team has so many holes, then are we for sure that it's a good idea to start at tackle? So when it comes to the Elite 8 players, and I'm just asking a question here because I'm not telling you that I wouldn't draft Joe Alt, because I do think they're going to draft Joe Alt, and I am not going to complain if they end up drafting Joe Alt. But if those Elite 8 players, at least 2 of them are going to be available, right? Maybe 3 if J.J. McCarthy or Roma Dunze pops into the top 6. And it's like, okay, if you have your choice between Alt or Neighbors, we've talked a lot on this show, and everybody here has said Alt, and yet at the same time, it's like, well, but Polian has touchdown scorer significantly ahead of left tackle. And I know who the touchdown scorers were on Bill Polian's Colts teams, right? Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Edgerrin James, Dallas Clark. Who was their left tackle all those years? I think it was Tarek Glenn, but I might be wrong about that. But how many of you guys know who Tarek Glenn is? And I get it, that offensive line's not as sexy as of a position as wide receiver. And that it's still important. But it is at least something worth discussing because it's not like the Titans don't have a need at pass rusher. I think they absolutely have a need at pass rusher. Arden Key is a Band-Aid. I mean, if Dallas Turner is Lawrence Taylor, you draft Dallas Turner. So it just makes me think that where the Titans sit, yes, I want Joe Alt. Yes, I think Joe Alt is a quote-unquote blue player, as Bill Polian is referencing. But he's got left tackle as the last thing on the list of, if you don't have a blue player at these positions, this is where you have to go. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Alan Smyrna says, I hope the Titans make a dumb pick at 7. Then you will have something to bitch and moan about for another year. Let me say this. If the Titans make a bad pick at 7, I have been thinking about this in my head. What would be something that would have me go insane on draft night? Brock Bowers at 7 wouldn't make me go crazy. Malik Neighbors would not make me go crazy at 7. Dallas Turner would not make me go crazy. So, it would have to be something like that Pro Football Focus mock draft we talked about yesterday. Talis Fuaga with the 7. I'll go nuts about something like that. Olu Fashanu at 7. I'll go nuts about something like that. But it's almost inconceivable that the Titans would do that, right? It has to be at this point. We know who the elite players in this draft, supposedly, we know who the elite players in this draft are. And you're going to be in a spot where you're picking an elite player. At least going back to last year, it does kind of feel like there was a fall off after kind of the first 6 or so picks. But in this draft, you're at 7. I think there's probably 8. So I think it's just, to me, I feel great about them picking one of these and me on draft night not going crazy. In fact, I'm making a prediction right now. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I'm making a prediction. 1 week from tonight at Twin Peaks in Madison for the draft show with Derek, Chris, and Trevor, when the Tennessee Titans pick at 7, I will not go ballistic. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I am making that prediction right now. Because I think there are too many good players at premium positions, and there's no way the Titans are going to do something stupid like they did last year. One texter says, all that negative stuff you were talking about was Vrabel and J-Rob. No. J-Rob had nothing to do with the guard that you took with the 11th overall pick last year. Hide and watch, says the texter. Rand and Callahan aren't going to do stupid stuff in this draft. No meltdown coming this year unless you manufacture it for ratings, says the texter. Guys, I think I would have been a pretty good actor. Maybe a step below James Gandolfini if I had ventured into acting.
Maybe just a step.
Just a step. I don't think I can manufacture the kind of outrage that I have had on draft night over the years. Ian, you know me as well as anybody. You think any of that stuff's manufactured?
No, I don't think so.
It's not. So they'd have to do stupid stuff in order for that to be an issue. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to more of your phones here on the program. And we do have to talk about that just ridiculous, and I love them, I do, but ridiculous trade that Willie Donick and Derek Mason and Nick Frazier want to accept. Poor Caroline today. We got to get to this. We'll do that coming up next. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my friends. They are the best. That's right. Hey, Hiller's been taking great care of my home for years. They can do the exact same for you. Smile and save this month with Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, because from now until April 30th, you can take advantage of big savings on home systems. That's right. Enjoy up to $1,500 off select new HVAC systems, whole home water filtration and descalers, or select new whole home generators. If you've been waiting for the right time to upgrade or replace your systems, now is the time. That's right. It's very easy. Just go to happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face truck today.
A trade back with the Bills. The Bills would get the 7th overall pick. You would get the 28th overall pick, in addition to a 2nd-round pick, number 60 overall, a 3rd-round pick, and a 2025 first-round pick. Would you do it?
Ooh, an extra first?
Next year.
Ooh.
To move down to 28?
I'm out.
I'm in. I love it.
Why?
That's a slam dunk.
It's a slam dunk.
Absolutely.
I think 7's a slam dunk.
That may be a layup, Willie. No,
That's
it
a
may
slam
be,
dunk.
I don't think that may be a
That's
three-pointer.
I'm running to take that. I am saying you're crazy for offering me that. Yes, I'm taking
Crazy
it.
for offering that.
100%. That's way too much to give up if you're Buffalo. That's a we're all in for this year kind of move, Buffalo, which is fine for them because they are. The Titans are in the long game. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of holes to fix. Only way to fix it is with picks. I'm in.
You know, I think Willie Donick, the radio host and play-by-play broadcaster, does a fine job. Willie Donick, the general manager, should be fired. I mean, goodness gracious, that trade. So again, if I'm hearing this correctly, this was and I listened to the whole thing today, listened to the midday show. I want to see how many text messages I sent Caroline as that was all going down because I could not believe my ears at what they wanted to take in exchange. Let's see. I sent Caroline 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 text messages because I was outraged by that trade idea. So what was crazy was I'm listening to Willie do this and talk about like, oh, this is a slam dunk. And so I went to the draft chart website. I think it's called Draft Tech. I go to the draft chart website and you can literally put in each team's name and it highlights each team's pick and the corresponding value. And then it says what their entire draft value in that year is at any given time. Buffalo's entire draft this year is worth 1,150 points. 7 is worth 1,500 points. It is not even close. That is not even remotely a fair trade. I mean, think about this. 7 represents in this draft an elite player. I mean, in most drafts, Joe Alt is not available at 7. But because there are going to be 3 or 4 quarterbacks that go, it pushes the elite players down, right? Trey Lance goes at 3, Penei Sewell ends up at 6. If you were in a draft the year later where there were no quarterbacks, then all of a sudden Penei Sewell probably goes number 1 overall. So you had to keep that in mind. In this year's draft, 7 represents an elite player. 28 does not even represent a day 1 starter. Think about that. Not even a day 1 starter. 60 is the last acceptable blue chip pick because that, Mark Dominic has said, look at the top 60 picks. If you get outside of 60, those guys are terrible. So I'm supposed to take 60? And then I'm going to get Buffalo's number 1 next year, which is going to be 27th overall. That's a terrible trade. That is a terrible trade. I mean, again, depth is important in the NFL. But the reason why the Buffalo Bills are good, it's not because of depth. It's because they have Josh Allen. Guess where they drafted Josh Allen? 7th. Like, that's why they have a good team. Kansas City, I think, is the definition of this. Kansas City has a giant hole at left tackle. Last year, they took a bargain basement, hanging on by a thread veteran to play left tackle last year. Chris Jones didn't even play in the first game. But because they've got about 5 really, really good players led by their quarterback, they're competing for the Super Bowl. They don't have any receivers. Their running back was taken in the 7th round. They could replace him tomorrow. Like, that's Kansas City's team. Kansas City is Mahomes, Jones, Kelsey, it was Snead, McDuffie, and I think that's about it. Like, that's Humphrey, the center's pretty good too. Like, that's it. And so if you've got elite players, the rest, you can buy some of those things. You can get them in free agency. You can get them in the 3rd round of future drafts. But elite, you take that at 6 overall. I remember when the Titans were getting ready to play the Bengals in the playoffs. And Vrabel was asked a question, and the question was something along the lines of, how did Cincinnati, what do you make of how Cincinnati has rebuilt themselves with Burrow and Chase? And Vrabel, because, Vrabel sometimes can't help himself, could not make the not have the smart ass response of saying, well, one was the first pick in the draft, the other was the 5th pick in the draft. It's like, yeah, that's why you get to take those players. Now, thank God that the Titans will never make that trade. And I know the Titans won't make that trade because Brian Callahan, when he was in Cincinnati, talked at length about how important it is to have those picks, to use them while you can, because once you get good, you never get picks like that again. He's like, we'll never have another chance at a Jamar Chase because we won't ever have that pick. So I know Brian Callahan understands that, which means Brian Callahan's not going to make this stupid trade. Slam dunk. Seriously? Like the trade the Titans made with the Rams, where they moved from 1 to 15. This isn't moving from 7 to 28. 15, you can still get a day one starter. And the Titans didn't even use the 15th pick because they traded up to get to 8, I believe, in order to take Jack Conklin. But that trade included 15, which is again, top 15 pick, but a top 60 pick. 15, 2 second-rounders in the 40s, I believe 43 and 45, 45 of which was Derrick Henry. A third-rounder, which is not as valuable, which ended up being Jonnu Smith. And another first. I mean, we're talking about 4 top 60 picks right there, one of which ended up being the 5th overall pick, the 5th, the 15th, and then the 43rd and 45th. And Willie wants 28, 60, and 28 again next year. Crazy talk. Woo! One texter in the text line says, would you go nuts if the Titans draft Rome Odunze at 7? No. Another texter says, bet money you go crazy about the second round pick and the 4th round pick. So here's the thing about that. I think it's pretty likely the Predators are going to be playing on that Friday night, so we probably won't have a Friday night draft show. If I had to guess. Which, honestly, like a playoff hockey game is more important to me than the 2nd and 3rd rounds of the draft. But that being said, we'll see. I didn't say that the Dylan Radunz trade was a bad pick when it was made, even though I went crazy. I said that I was just like, I've never heard of this guy before. Like, I think that was my response, was that I had never heard of that guy. If they take a guy that I've never heard of at 38, I'll probably have an issue with it. But I feel like I've heard enough of these guys that when they take Ricky Pearsall, I'll be like, yeah, I know who that is. Or something like that. Skylar says, what would make the proposed trade with the Bills worth it to you? You're good at knowing the worth of these picks. Here's what it would take. If Buffalo really wanted the 7th pick, and let's say that Rome Odunze is the target. Harrison's gone. Neighbors is gone. Buffalo is saying, we want one of the top 3. We want one of the top 3, period. So that's what we're going to do. We got to have one of the top 3 receivers. Odunze's there. We'll make it. Here's what Buffalo has to do. Buffalo has to give me their 1st rounder this year, their 1st rounder next year, their 2nd rounder this year, their 2nd rounder next year, and the 2nd rounder that they have that is Minnesota's. And I might honestly want an extra 3rd round pick next year to make up for the Snead. I may actually want that too. And that, even then, I have reservations about that trade. I really do. You want to make that move, we may have to talk about Deion Dawkins and Dalton Kincaid as part of the package. One of the two. And so then I throw that out there, and you're probably going to hear that and say, well, they're never going to make that trade. Of course, that's the point. Like, if you want this pick that bad. I looked it up today, and I saw, the trade that Houston made with Arizona in order to move up last year to get Will Anderson was 12, next year's 1, and 35. And that's to move from 12 to 3. That is the kind of, again, none of these picks you're getting from Buffalo are going to be inside of the top 20. So you got to give me more. And you got to give me a lot. And they all have to be top 60 picks outside of if I want a little sweetener there or a guy like Dalton Kincaid. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get back into your phones on this. 615-737-1025 here on the program. So everybody got mad about that Drake May, Will Levis discussion that we had on the program earlier this week. And there was a little nugget that was dropped today that I actually think would make the ability to trade Will Levis, if an elite prospect like Drake May was to fall in your lap, that would actually make it possible. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Tune into 94.9 The Fan today as the Sounds take on the Omaha Storm Chasers at First Horizon Park. Pregame is at 6:20. First pitch is at 6:35, with coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. And I should note that Vandy Baseball has been moved up. So Vandy Baseball is going to play at 5 o'clock today against Florida. Pre-game will start at 4:45 on 94.9 The Fan, and then it will switch over to 102.5 The Game when we get off the air at 6 o'clock. And Vandy Baseball is brought to you by Smoky Mountain Tops, your countertop experts. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com.
Do you run the risk of passing on the next Patrick Mahomes? Yes. But you can't draft, no matter what everybody says, you can't draft quarterback 3 years in a row when you have trading up twice, when you're in desperation for other positions that any quarterback is going to need, be it Drake May or Will Levis. You have to get a left tackle. You have to get a wide receiver. You have to get an edge rusher. You have to get all these other things. And it's ridiculous to think, well, we'll just take another quarterback who's not a sure thing. You have to cycle.
Unless you're, well, I agree with you, unless you believe he's a sure thing.
Right. And then Caroline said, well, then you trade Levis. I mean, she falls into this thing like, well, everybody wants the guy that you no longer want. I mean, so you turn the guy that you traded for big resources. You spend a second, you traded, I don't remember what, your second and this year's third, and you trade him for a fourth or a fifth. Nobody's interested in Will Levis anymore. They've moved on to this year's quarterback class.
Okay, that was PK yesterday yelling and screaming about, again, just the hypothetical situation of if Drake May were to fall, and I said I'd take him at 7, and I didn't even think that was a big deal when I said it. Like when people, I think it was Monday, somebody called in and brought that up, and I said, well, if May's there, I would take him. And people got all mad. And then the next day, everybody got mad when we talked about it for 3 hours. And then, PK got mad the next day after that. So in theory, I agree with the idea that if you draft May, you're probably not going to get a full dollar value return for Will Levis. But then Charles Robinson was on Robbie and Rexroad today, and he was asked about the Giants and whether the Giants could take Joe Alt, and if the Giants are really in play for J.J. McCarthy. And Charles brought up the fact that teams like the Giants that probably don't love their quarterback have got to think about next year's quarterback class. And apparently, according to Charles, next year's quarterback class isn't very good.
Another thing you have to consider about the quarterbacks, and do you take it? You're not taking them next year, okay? Next year's class, at least right now, and I know other people will surface over the course of a college football season, but you're not feeling great about what the quarterback class looks like next year. Very poor. Like I was doing a running backs piece this year, literally in the last 48 hours, putting it together about how, just poor the running backs position is from the star standpoint, like the one that you're taking to define the class. And I had an evaluator said to me, he's like, hey, this is the ebb and flow. Just wait until we get to the quarterbacks next year, because it's going to be like the Kenny Pickett year where you're like, is there a first-round quarterback in this group? And if so, where do they get taken? And you're not going to feel great about that. So if you're in the market for the quarterback, you're kind of looking in a 2-year window instead of a 1-year window.
Okay, which now takes me to Levis, which is I believe that if the quarterbacks go, right, and the only way that May would get to the Titans at 7 in this hypothetical situation is if the Patriots go McCarthy, which a lot of people seem to think the Patriots might go McCarthy over May, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But that's my opinion, and their opinion might be different. If that's the case, all 4 quarterbacks are gone. If the quarterback class next year is as bad as the 22 quarterback class, which was Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Sam Howell, Bailey Zappi, I feel like I'm leaving some other, Matt Corral. I mean, that was that. If this quarterback class is that bad, and I think it's Quinn Ewers and Shedeur Sanders, and maybe there'll be a guy like Joe Burrow or Jaden Daniels that comes out and just goes crazy, and it's like, okay, that guy's towards the top of the draft. But as of right now, if you were to take Drake May at 7, and you were to turn around and call one of these teams that's going to get left out, that is probably looking for a quarterback, like Denver, like the Raiders, like New Orleans, if you were to call one of these teams, Seattle, that doesn't have a young quarterback, right there that they can say this quarterback could be part of our future, if there are all of those teams that are there and the quarterbacks are bad next year, I could see a team saying, hey, we'll deal next year's second in order to make this move. And I use Denver as the example. Let's say they're all gone. So Denver at 12 has to pick Michael Penix Jr., and that's if Minnesota doesn't take Penix at 11. Well, what would you rather have? Would you rather have Will Levis and a player with that 11th pick? Or would you rather have Michael Penix and next year's second? And my gut tells me I'd rather have, and I hate doing this where people say, oh, well, just trade with them and they'll do that. It's like, you don't know if they'll do that, but I'm trying to put myself in the Broncos' shoes, and I think the Broncos would do that. Because I think if I can get the 11th pick in this year's draft, which could be Roma Dunze, or the 12th pick, which probably won't be Brock Bowers or Roma Dunze, but it could. But it certainly could be Olu Fashanu. It certainly could be, that kind of prospect. I can get that player, and I have the quarterback in Levis, or I have a quarterback in Levis, as opposed to Jarrett Stidham, and I don't have to use that pick on Michael Penix, and I'm not giving up anything this year because I'm giving up next year's second. I think you do that. And so I do think that the class of next year being so bad, I think does actually, makes me think that it makes me feel good about the fact that if that were to happen, that PK, no one's going to be interested in Levis. There may not be any quarterbacks next year for anybody to be interested in. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. A lot of you are just going crazy about Willie Donick's trade with Buffalo, and that does make me smile inside. I mean, I love Willie, but Willie, what you thinking about, babe? All right, TD is coming up next. We got the TD Power Hour. Then we got the Preds playoff preview show at 4 o'clock where Roman Yossi will join us to start. Andrew Burnett will join us at 4:30. We're loaded on that as well. TD's up next here on Stillman & Company. 615-737-1025. We'll hit the phones as we always do at the end of the hour. Hey, join the Nashville Superspeedway in the city of Lebanon for a Speedway on the Square this Saturday, April 20th from 1 to 6 in downtown Lebanon. Stop by and bring the family for a day filled with inflatables, face painting, balloon art, live music, and a ticket giveaway to the Ally 400. And also, yes, that's that. So enjoy it. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. The Preds playoff preview in 1 hour. Roman Yossi will kick us off there at 4 o'clock, but we're 1 week away from the NFL draft. TD is here for the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD just coming off of a sit-down with Joe Alt for Talking with TD that will be on this week's Talking with TD. So, again, if you are not a Talking with TD listener, which you should be, you absolutely need to listen this week because TD has just talked to Joe Alt. TD, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, man. That Joe Alt interview was great. We got into some stuff. I learned that he has a really, really huge fondness for Bill Callahan. I mean, what offensive lineman doesn't? But, yeah.
That sounds like he's probably spent some time around Bill Callahan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so this is where I want to start, TD, which is we're 1 week away from the draft. Is it as simple as the Tennessee Titans are drafting Joe Alt with the 7th pick, and that's what it's going to be, and all the other speculation, and, well, where do they have this guy, and if this guy falls, and if that, or is it infinitely more complicated, in your opinion, thinking about what could go down next Thursday night?
Yeah, it would seem to be that simple, right? Because you have the almost unanimous top prospect at a position that is almost unanimously the biggest need for this Titans roster, but it doesn't always work that way, right? You have the option of trading back. You got the J.J. McCarthy, the Bo Nix. If those guys warrant the value, or not even warrant the value, but the interest, right, to move out of 7, you got the trade back option, right? You got other players, Malik Neighbors, who are really good. So you would like to say it's that simple, but I just don't think it is.
So the thoughts I have, the first thought I have is, okay, are there better players than Joe Alt in this draft? And if so, does it make sense for the Titans to take a better player than Joe Alt? We were talking off air about the Mark Dominic, take that he says he would draft Brock Bowers and not even think twice about it. And I mean, I think you and I both agree. Bowers is awesome.
Yeah.
But where the Titans sit right now, I kind of see Bowers and Alt probably similarly as good. And I think, left tackle's pretty important there.
Right.
But then could there be like Malik Neighbors could be so good that even though the Titans have 2 receivers, they could be sitting there saying, hey, we could find a tackle at the 38th pick, and then but Malik Neighbors we can't pass up on. Do you think that there are players that are ahead of Alt on the board that right now we probably think wouldn't get to them, but we didn't think Will Levis would be available in the 2nd round last year either?
I think some may have Jared Verse, Dallas Turner ahead of Joe Alt. Now, I don't have him there. Joe Alt is a top 3 prospect to me. You heard the promos.
Williams, Maris, Marvin Harrison, and Alt for you?
Yeah. You hear the promos. I believe he's the most pro-ready prospect in this draft, including Harrison Jr. and Caleb Williams. That's how I feel. But you look at case-by-case scenario, the juice that a guy like Neighbors adds to a team is crazy. You mentioned Brock Bowers. These are 2 guys where, in my opinion, they make the protection better because you line up in shotgun, you catch it, and you just throw it right to them and let them get you the free yards because that's what they do. They're yards after catch specialists. And in the case of Neighbors, we're talking about a super explosive yards after the catch specialist.
You know what I was thinking about with Bowers? He supposedly at some high school, like elite camp or something, ran a 4.5 when in 2019. I think he was maybe a junior in high school or something. Now, look, I have no idea how fast he runs now. He could have gone to Georgia, put on weight, and not run a 4.5. They could have made him faster at Georgia, with the speed training and everything else they probably have there. And because of the ankle, I don't think he didn't run it all in his pro day or at the combine. But I'd really love to know that because I was thinking about this yesterday when it comes to Bowers. And I had somebody that has done this before that was telling me Bowers after the catch is one of, when he enters the NFL, will be one of the most elite players in the league the day he steps into the league. And AJ ran a 4.55. AJ ran a 4.49, which is right there at that 4.5.
4.49?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if he's running at that 4.5 at his size and he's good after the catch, we keep talking about tight ends and where tight ends fit, but that's AJ stuff we're talking about in maybe a little bit bigger body.
Yeah, I think, with AJ, you got to look at the long speed because that's one thing, and the instant acceleration. And I always loved that. I would talk about it with him all the time. Like, bro, you accelerate through the football as good as anybody I've ever seen. Literally as good as anybody I've ever seen, including Jerry Rice, including Andre Reed, who is my favorite player ever. The way he catches that ball and instantly takes off is different. So you have that, but then also you look at AJ, the long speed, you don't see him get caught. Now, he'll run that angle, curve it a little bit, but the point is you don't see him get caught, so that long speed. The 40 is important, but I think you also look at, and that's the good thing about these advanced metrics that we have to look at now, as in the case with Keon Coleman, he was a 4.6 40. He was clocked at 22 miles an hour. So he has speed.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I think when you look at Brock Bowers, I don't look at it as much from a speed perspective as I look at it from he's busting through tackles like George Kittle. You know what I mean?
And like the thing about, again, I keep going back to AJ. AJ, after the ball was in his hands, was as dangerous against these DBs as Derrick Henry was with the ball in his hands against the DBs. And I think Bowers might be that same type of player.
Yeah.
And so it's like, man, that could be tough to pass up on, especially knowing that Ridley's probably going to be the guy going deep and DeAndre is going to be that intermediate, and then where they could put Bowers all throughout the lineup. And it's like, I can see a guy like Brian Callahan saying, can my dad coach up a guy I take at 39 plus Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT. Can my dad coach up PT and the 39th pick, and I get Brock Bowers, or I get Malik Neighbors, and I get that guy that can put it in the paint?
And that's what it boils down to. We've touched on that before, how many times they have to be considering, okay, Bill Callahan, is that a gift or a curse, or is it both, right? Because I'll say this. You take Bill Callahan and put him with Joe Alt, man, you're cooking.
Well, and Cushenberry, and what we think Skoronski should be given better coaching and better players next year.
Right, and a full year of health. You know what I mean? I think that's important also. He had his struggles last year. We're not going to deny it. But I think if you look at that left side, now you're getting back to, that run left that you had with Raj and Saffold and Taylor Lewan.
Sure.
Not to say that they're as strong run blocking as those two were, but just having that side, it's done. You don't have to worry about the left side for another X amount of years.
Do you think, how many players, you said 2 on your board ahead of Alt, in Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
What's your gut tell you about, just knowing what you know of Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan, how many players could you foresee on their board ahead of Joe Alt?
All right, because you just have to look at the track record, how much they've invested in him. Combine visit, 30 visit, pro day visit, and we're talking about being there and on top of it.
Sure.
They weren't at Notre Dame. You know what I mean? So I'll say Neighbors.
But you know how the conspiracy theory inside of my head works. Is
They
were at Neighbors, but they
screen.
weren't at Joe Alt. That means that they are trying to throw him off with I could talk myself into
I don't think you have to throw people off on Joe Alt, though, because he's that good to where it's like,
right, if you want him, get ahead of the Titans.
Yeah.
And if you don't want him, then they're going to take him.
Right. And I think I would say 3. Bowers and J.C. Latham are very close, though. In my opinion, I think they would be very close. You have that group.
I was just thinking about this too, about throwing off. The Chargers really don't have to throw anybody off on anything because, if they want to take Alt, what are they going to do? Keep you from trading up to 4 with Arizona? You're not going to trade up to 4 with Arizona. They're just going to take them. That's what it's going to be. The ones where it's like, throw somebody off is like if you're Denver and you love Latham, or if you're Denver at 12 and you love Penix, you don't want anybody to know that you love Penix or that you love Quinyon Mitchell, because then it's like, oh, hey, we need to get to 10 with the Jets in order to get Quinyon Mitchell. And so those are the ones where I think you got to kind of hide what you're doing. Yeah. With the Titans, I think it'd be very easy to show all the love to Neighbors, Alt, Bowers, Adunze, and then it's like, well, they're going to end up with one of those guys no matter what you think you're going to end up doing.
Yeah, I agree. Alt is just, in my opinion, such a, I don't want to say guarantee, but it's just like, and this isn't like coming off of me interviewing him.
Sure.
Now. I've been saying this, all along.
Sure, like for as long as I've known that he's existed.
Yeah, so I just think he's just such a sure shot. Now, my one question about Alt, and it's interesting because in talking to him, I asked him if he ever watched Taylor Lewan, and he said, yeah. The thing about Taylor Lewan is the edge. You know what I mean? And he talked about how Taylor Lewan is always, like he has that edge. And he went into how he's such a calm and collective player. So it made me be like, ooh, a personal protector, anchor the offensive line. How much of that mutt do you have in you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's really going to come down to how well Bill Callahan is going to be able to bring that out. But again, like I haven't interacted with him, on game day or on a practice, you know what I mean? To see, like a guy could talk a certain way, but when you get on that football field or get in that environment, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to that point, like I'm not saying people fake things, but I think there is a certain element of like, hey, man, like here's a seriousness with which I do my job. It's not the same as I do the other things, but when I'm doing my job, there is a different. TD is with us, 615-737-1025. We'll make sure we leave enough time to hit your phones at the end of the hour, as we always do. Okay, if Alt's gone at 7, then what the hell do they do? We'll do that next with TD, Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
Let's say the Chicago Bears are enamored with Joe Alt Jr. They pick at number 9. And I'll just throw a trade out there. The Bears move up to number 6 in a deal with the New York Giants, and they select Joe Alt Jr. My question for you is, sitting there at 7 if you're the Titans, is there another tackle that you consider, I don't want to even say worthy because that's difficult, but as far as the draft goes, that has that type of earmark to it? Or is this at a point where if Rand Carthen had indeed targeted Joe Alt Jr. and now he's off the board, or Joe Alt, then what is the situation there? Is he moving out because there could be value at the tackle position in the early teens, maybe even a little bit later than that? Is there anyone else that we can talk about here being worthy of that number 7 pick?
Yeah, that's the interesting part. And obviously I can't speak for Rand Carthon and his scouting department, but to me it comes down to if Joe Alt's not available and you still want to have a tackle, I think the guys that are in consideration there, Olu Fashanu, the tackle from Penn State, and Talise Fuaga, the tackle from Oregon State.
Charles Davis on SiriusXM NFL Radio. Now, I saw on Friday, I heard Charles say that Thursday, and Matt Miller, TD, your colleague at ESPN, had written something similar that was, if Alt's not there, the Titans could trade down for Fuaga or for Fashanu. And I was like, okay. I'm like, for those guys to have the exact same 2 guys. And I got a feeling the way Charles said that, because, Charles does the preseason games. Charles is plugged in. It would not surprise me if Charles has a direct line to Rand. And it would not surprise me if Rand was telling Charles and telling other people, oh, yeah, we like Fuaga, we like Fashanu, when in reality, just like the Colts telling everybody last year they loved Will Levis, they really don't. But the question here is, if Joe Alt's gone, I've guaranteed the Chargers aren't taking him at 5. I cannot see it, but everybody tells me they think they could. If he's gone at 5, then what?
I think this team wants to trade back. I think that's the first thing that they want to do. That's what I believe. Now, if they could trade back 10, 11, and still get Alt, hey, the world is a wonderful place, and everybody's playing Louis Armstrong music, right? But if they move back, I think, J.C. Latham also comes into the mix. But you said if Alt is gone. So ideally what they want to do, I think, is trade back regardless. But I think, if Alt is gone, you absolutely have to consider, if you're stuck on the board, if Neighbors is there, I will firmly say that Neighbors is ranked ahead of Dunze for them. And, I mean, the tea leaves tell you that.
Sure.
Right? So you do have that. I think Neighbors would be probably the next option, like, oh, this is the guy that we want to pick. I still believe Dallas Turner is in play. I still think he's in play. I know.
Have they had him in for a visit?
Not that I know. No, they haven't. But I think Dallas Turner would be in play just because this is a team that still needs pass rush help. This is a team that, right, wrong, or indifferent, neglected the position in free agency. Remember what Rand Carthon said at the Combine, where he mentioned how, and he was talking about O-line and receivers specifically, but he mentioned how there's depth at both positions, and then he also pointed to how free agency can dictate where you end up going in the draft. Sebastian Joseph Day is a solid player next to Jeffrey Simmons, but they haven't gotten any edge rushers.
So, on the trade down front, and again, this is just me, and I haven't watched 1/1,000,000th of the tape that they've watched or that you've probably watched on these players. But I look at it, I'm like, I want one of the 3 quarterbacks, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, Brock Bowers, and Dallas Turner. I want an elite player because I did not sit through that horrendous season last year to go out and take a guy that's going to be a good player but not an elite player.
Yeah.
I worry if they trade back. It's one thing if you trade back with Atlanta because you spook Atlanta that you're going to take Turner, or you spook Atlanta that you're going to take Neighbors, and so Atlanta says, fine, we'll give you 47 and you move back to 8. That's one thing. I worry we start talking about 11, 12. Now those players are gone, And yes, they still get J.C. Latham, who might be a good player, but maybe doesn't profile as elite as the other players. And so it makes me nervous hearing about trade down.
Right, because what you're looking at is blue chip players, right? You're thinking, okay, you have a top 10 pick, number 7 overall. You want one of the hands down 10 best players in this draft class, and that's very understandable. I think you also have to look at it from a perspective of the quantity standpoint. So case in point, let's say McCarthy is there and you got the Broncos, Raiders, and Vikings all like, hey, that's who, Do you take 11 and 23? I do. You know what I mean? Do you take 13 and 44? I strongly consider it and probably do, because at 13 you could still get an Olu Fashanu, get a J.C. Latham.
Sure, or you can pick up the phone and call Chicago and move back to 9 or something like that.
Right, you could do some things, but you also are getting yourself another top 100 player. And I know top 100 players aren't always the same blue chip caliber player that the top 10 is, but you could solve a few different things, and it really comes down to, okay, is that drop off from a Joe Alt, from a Dunze, Neighbors, Harrison, from a Dallas Turner to that next tier? Is that great enough to outweigh getting 2 of those players in that next tier?
Sure.
That's all the gymnastics, mental stuff that you have to go through. I don't envy Rand Carthon at all.
So I actually think about the 2016 draft in relation to this, because the Titans had the number 1 pick, and they'd already drafted Mariota the year before, so they thought they were set at quarterback. And they trade out with the Rams or whatever. But before they traded out, I was talking to Floyd about this. And I was like, you're trading away Joey Bosa if you do this. You're trading away Ezekiel Elliott, or you're trading away that kind of player if you do this. And he says, but if I'm getting Michael Roos, Samari Roll, and Derek Mason, is it worth it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, that would make that, I guess, worth it. And I go back to the 16 draft again, because the Titans ended up with Conklin, Derrick Henry, Austin Johnson, Corey Davis, and Jonnu Smith. And yet, what's crazy is, as good as Conklin was, and Henry ended up being an elite player, but was not an elite prospect, for instance, those were some really good elite prospects that they passed on by doing that in Laramie Tunsil, in Joey Bosa, in Jalen Ramsey, in all of those guys. And I almost feel like this is kind of similar. That if you make that trade out, you're not getting the Jalen Ramsey, you're not getting the Joey Bosa, you're not getting that player, but would you do it if it gave you all the top, 45 picks that you got in order to get those other guys? And that's the hard part for me to be in, especially not knowing, this year's draft is kind of screwed up, in my opinion, from this point. I think it's a very deep draft, obviously, as far as elite players are concerned, because normally there's about 4 or 5 of these kind of guys, but the quarterbacks push down the Bowerses and those guys. Then it's a good receiver draft in the first round, second round. It's a good tackle draft in the first round, probably till about
early
35, something like that. But it's a bad draft when you get to day 3 because of all the NIL players that have decided they're going to stay in college.
Late day 3, yeah.
And so now guys that would go in the 4th round are really would be guys that are actually more 5th and 6th round guys. And that's why I had no problem last week with that trade the Titans made of that late 7th rounder for Leroy Watson, because I'm like, if Bill Callahan says, I mean, that's the same as a UDFA in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. It is the same. When you look in those 60 snaps, he didn't give up a sack. There's a lot to like about, there's enough to like about that to be okay giving up a 7th round
But
pick.
it's like a bad draft at the end, whereas it's a pretty good draft. And so managing that, okay, I can trade back, but how many top 45 picks am I getting? How many top 60 picks am I getting? How many that? And it makes me nervous just thinking about that scenario.
Yeah, and another thing that I think makes this whole thing very difficult is the pass rushing side of it. Now, from 38 to 106, it's like, whew. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You're missing out on a chance at a Marshawn Nealon. You're missing out at a chance, at a Chris Braswell. Possibly a Adisa Isaac. You know what I mean? There's a lot of guys that you're missing out on. So now you have to go back and you draft on traits. Like, okay, 5th round, 6th round. Oh, okay, Xavier Thomas out of Clemson.
It's funny you say that.
That's the tough part of it.
Well, it's funny you say that because Pat Kerwin scared me yesterday that basically he said that once Turner goes off the board, now it's a free-for-all because there's Jared Verse and Chop Robinson, and after those guys,
Latu, don't forget him.
Oh yeah,
he's the best pass rusher.
But a lot of
draft.
teams are really worried about him supposedly because
the medical,
bad medical.
Yeah,
and so it's like, okay, we're tackle. There's all these guys. Okay, well, if Fashanu goes off, then you still got Latham and Fuaga and Mims, and whereas like if Turner goes off the board, like let's say the Chargers just say, hey, look, Khalil Mack's old, Joey Bosa's always hurt. Let's take Dallas Turner. Then apparently those teams are going to be freaking out because after Verse, Chop Robinson, and Latu, there aren't that many pass rushers.
Yeah, elite, instant impact pass rushers. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that you have. Now, there's situational guys that you could bring in. There's a few of them that you could bring in. But I think when you go from that top 4 or so, that drop-off is more dramatic than the drop-off, especially at receiver and offensive line, especially there.
TD is with us for the TD Power Hour, 615-737-1025. Let's move our thoughts from the first round to after the first round. Titans at 38. What do we think, what kind of player are we looking at for the Titans at 38? And we'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
When I was GM of the Bucks, we did some research into it, not statistics, and that would be actually a fun analytic project to do, to be able to have to go back over years and kind of look at the way that you traded up or traded back and what was the success rate. The only thing that we really kind of looked at is right around pick 55 to 60, right in that range. The more picks you can get in that top 60, the better chance just the better you are. So instead of having 2/3, I'd rather have a first and 2 seconds. Or, can I trade a 3, 4, and a 5 to go get a 2? Or can I, the other thing that I thought was very important that the draft point charts took a while to actually even come around to was the 5th-year option and how valuable that was to sit there and say, I've got them for 5 years, not 4. That's why I traded up back in the day to take Doug Martin as a running back, because I was like, hey, I've got him for 5 years, plus I've got a tag. I've got a running back for 6 years, which is basically some of their lifespan. That's a really good value. If he plays 6 years here, that's actually pretty darn good that you've got a running back and you've got under control and at a very reasonable cost. So that all being said, I'm a believer trading up is going to be much more beneficial than it was trading back and accumulating picks.
Mark Dominic on SiriusXM NFL Radio. I'll tell you this right now. Dominic has steered me into, I just talk top 60.
Quantity over quality.
Well, to me, this would be quality over quantity, right? Because he's saying, I'll take 2/3.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Quality over quantity.
Yeah. I'll take 2/3, and I'd rather have a second instead of the 2/3. So with that, the Titans only have one other top 60 pick at 38. We've talked a lot of names about what could be there at 38. When you think about where the Titans sit and what will be available there will always be names that we're talking about right now that on that Friday we'll be talking about, saying who thought Leatu Latu, for instance, is available there
he's there at
heading into day 2.
No conversation.
So I do wonder what your expectation is, TD, for the second round.
Well, I think, and it's something I've mentioned multiple times, every year you have 50 first-round draft picks.
Yep.
Right? Every year. So to your point, you're going to have a guy there. So I think the expectation at 38 should still be, okay, it may not be a blue-chip player, but it will be an immediate contributor. Now, there's different categories of immediate contributor, right? You have a guy who is a situational pass rusher, right? So you bring him in on third downs, go get the quarterback, shut up, don't do anything else, just go, I want you to hunt the quarterback. Or you have a nickel corner, right, where you come in, hey, look, it's 11 personnel, it's third down. Listen, I need you to stick with this guy. There's different degrees and levels to that.
Like day one starter versus, becomes a starter throughout the course of the year.
Or even doesn't even become a starter, but he's just, a situational specialist. That's something that I remember the 49ers drafted Aldon Smith 7 overall, right? All his job was come in and sack the quarterback. Parrish Harrison, rest in peace, Tennessee, and Ahmad Brooks. Those were the starting outside backers. But when third down came on, Parrish Harrison was out. Aldon Smith came in, and Aldon Smith had 14 sacks or so. He approached the Freaks record.
Yeah.
He fell short of it, but he approached it. So you could get a guy like that at 38, in my opinion. You could also get a guy who, to your point, becomes an eventual starter at some point. So definitely still expect to get an impact player.
What do you think about the tackles that would be available there? Because, I asked Mark Dominic about his whole Brock Bowers thing. He wants to take Brock Bowers at 7. And I said, what are you going to do? And he told me, he said, look, I'm not the biggest Petit Frere fan out there, but he goes, I think I would take my 4th-round pick, use it with my 2nd rounder to move up and take a tackle. I don't think you can get into the 1st round with a 4th rounder, but use that 4th rounder to move up in the 2nd round, take a tackle, and then have that guy in the 2nd round and PT be the 2 tackles because he likes Brock Bowers so much. Do you think that there will be, some tackles that are worth saying, hey, move up to 35 to take Kingsley Suamataia or one of these tackles that maybe falls out of the 1st round, that the Titans could stick out there the way they did Michael Roos in 2005 when they drafted him in the 1st round, stuck him at right tackle?
Patrick Paul remains the one that I would move up to get, if that's the situation that you have to do. And I think when you look at Patrick Paul, you're talking about a lot of tools. You're talking about measurables, right? 6'6", 6'7", 328 pounds, and he moves like he's built. He's built like he's not fat.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then the footwork and stuff. It's just a matter of just refining him as an offensive lineman. Hey, the Bill Callahan effect. I would look at that. That's something I would definitely think about doing. But, I mean, me personally, it has to be, if I'm not going O-line at 7, you better be somebody that just right away.
Marvin Jr.,
Neighbors. You know, I don't go Dallas Turner before an O-lineman at 7, specifically.
How do you think Turner compares to Will Anderson?
That's tough. I mean, I think Will Anderson is a much more impactful game changer than Turner. He had the production to show it too, so I don't put them in the same category.
My thing with Turner was Turner showed up at 18 years old in the SEC and was dominating grown men. And that means something to me.
Yeah.
Because, if Saban's putting you on the field on defense at 18 years old, that means you've beaten out a bunch of guys that are 5 stars and everything else. Mm. And I do feel like Turner is probably – see, I like Verse, though, because I watched him in the ACC this year, and I think there may be a little injury concern with him. But I really liked Verse. In that ACC championship game, Florida State was down to their third-string quarterback who couldn't complete a pass. And, I mean, he just took over the entire game. Not to say that we at Louisville were very good, but it just he wowed me when he played.
And that's what a pass rusher has to do. If I'm using a top 10 pick on you, I need you to just absolutely take over a game the way Jeffrey Simmons did in that game against the Bengals, right?
Yeah.
That's what I need.
Right, like the Bosa brothers did in college. Yeah. That's what I – All right, I want to leave time for TD for your phone, so we'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Again, the Preds playoff preview show at 4 o'clock. Roman Yossi at 4. Andrew Burnett will be at 5. He was originally 4:30. He'll be at 5 now. And we got a ton of stuff on that front. Hey, the NBA play-in tournament gives teams the chance to play their way into the postseason, so it only seems right that new customers on FanDuel can play their way into $150. That's right. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs. So you can go with 3-pointers made in a game, over under point total, first basket score, and more. You name it. Just go to FanDuel.com/JGM to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over in President, Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Teron Davenport is with us. 1 week to go ahead of the NFL draft. And the TD Power Hour on the Thursday of the draft is usually probably one of my favorite power hours of the year. I'm not going to lie.
Nice, man. I appreciate it.
It's like, because I'm getting so close to the finish line that it's like, okay, now somebody else gets to come on and just throw apart everything that I just said for the last hour. And I'm okay with it. Let's go to your phones, which are driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. One texter says, TD, I want the Titans to draft the best player available at 7 if they cannot trade down. And then if it's not Joe Alt, I want them to sign Andrus Peat to play left tackle. I, by the way, will say, I have heard, and I don't know if you've heard the same thing, Peat and the Titans very much alive as a possibility after the draft. And I have heard that the Titans have a couple of tackles that they've kind of earmarked for after the draft of, hey, if we don't go this route, then we can go that route.
Yeah, I've heard Pete. I haven't heard others, but hey, I mean, you do have to be prepared, have that what if, and I think that's where Pete comes into play.
One texter says, TD, what do you think about the Packers signing Andre Dillard? We did see that. We did chuckle about that. Breaking news, Andre Dillard is officially a Green Bay Packer.
Hey, look, for depth, sure. Why not? Just one of those situations where you just, you touch your left shoulder, your right shoulder, your belly button, and your forehead, and you say, please don't let him have to play.
I'll say this about the Packers, though, and I don't think that Dillard is savable, but their tackles are kind of later round guys that they've sat on the bench, developed. This Zach Tom that they have, I think, is their right tackle. He's really good.
Yeah, he was a solid player. If I'm not mistaken, he had an injury situation coming out of Nebraska, I want to say.
So he was probably like a second rounder that moved down to the 4th?
Yeah.
Michael says, I am pessimistic that Alt or Neighbors will be available at 7. If that's the case, TD, how would you rank Roma Dunze, Olu Fashanu, or Brock Bowers as possible fits for the Titans?
Well, there's a few ways to look at it. If you're going just off of pure prospect, I would say Odunze, Bowers, Fashanu. But if you're going off of what the Titans need, I would probably go Fashanu, Odunze, Bowers.
How good do you think Odunze can be?
I think he could be really good. I love the way he attacks the football. I love the body control that he has. There's a lot to really like about him. So, I mean, I think he could be awesome. I think he could be a Pro Bowl caliber player.
See, that's the thing is I heard Rick Spielman say that he thinks that Fashanu is a day one starter and that Fashanu will be a good player and he will start and you can win a championship with him as your left tackle, but that he doesn't think Fashanu will be a Pro Bowler or a top-of-the-league left tackle. And it's like, okay, well, if Odunze can be a top-of-the-league wide receiver, I almost feel like I have to take the top of the league wide receiver over the tackle who will be a starter because 5 years from now, we will not remember what you needed or what you didn't.
Yeah. And I think, you look at Odunze, you also have that versatility. He could play all three, you know what I mean? And if you look at the Oregon game, the second one, they had him in the backfield at times, catching out of there. So,
Texture says, TD, how would you feel if the Titans ended up drafting Brock Bowers at 7?
I wouldn't be mad at it, because that'd be good for business. You know what I mean? So I think, how I would feel is, okay, this team is really focusing on playmakers, instant impact playmakers, and I think that guys that can score touchdowns.
I think what it would tell me is that Brian Callahan has decided, hey, man, we're going to do what we did in Cincinnati, which is we're going to patch this line together, and it's not going to be pretty, but we're going to have 3 pass catchers that we can rely on. And that's before we get to Spears or Pollard. I really think that Spears is a much better pass catcher than Pollard. And that I really think what's going to happen is that Pollard's going to be kind of the Derrick Henry running back and that Spears is going to be the pass-catching back, but that they'll feel better about turning around and handing it to Spears or throwing it to Pollard than, say, they were about handing it to Hilliard or throwing it to Henry.
Yeah, that versatility, that flexibility without being predictable is definitely something that they really like in Pollard and Spears. So to your point there, I will agree to that.
Has anybody over there given you the idea that they're thinking about playing them on the field together?
No, but, I mean, why wouldn't you? I would definitely do that. There were times where they had Henry and Spears on the field together. And you look, you could go like that pony package, right, the 2 running back set, and it could dictate the other team going a little bit bigger with their personnel, then you motion Spears out over the numbers, and you typically are going to have an advantage there with him versus linebackers. So.
One texter says, TD, what do you think of the Pro Football Focus mock draft that had Peyton Wilson to the Titans at 38?
It will not happen.
Because that's too high?
There aren't many people in this country who are higher than Peyton Wilson than me.
Well, you've talked about him a lot, but you haven't talked about him at 38.
No, and I haven't talked about him from a Titans perspective because I think those injuries, I don't think that that's a direction that they would go. But if you're talking about the best inside backer, it's Peyton, and there's no conversation. Junior Colson, no. Edge Cooper, no. Jeremiah Trotter, no. Peyton Wilson is the best. He is. This is going to tell you how much I like him as a prospect. He's Brian Urlacher. That's what he is.
Pretty high praise.
I don't think at 38 though, just because of the injuries.
And what we talked about again, when they played Louisville, he was the best player on the field, and that matters to me because it's like, look, man, your combine stuff, that's great, and I think that stuff's important because I worked with a guy who talked about that stuff every day. But, like, when I can feel you in the game and I'm watching 1,000 miles away, that's when I know that you're a pretty good player.
In addition to all the cuts, there wasn't an inside backer better than him at the combine.
And to that point, like, I go back to Derrick Henry falling to 45, and it's like when Derrick Henry was in college, Derrick Henry dominated every game Derrick Henry played. It's like sometimes we overthink this stuff a little bit. Like, one texter says, TD, I'm convinced that Neighbors is Jamar Chase 2.0.
I don't go that far.
If you are Brian Callahan and you saw what Jamar did for Burrow, wouldn't it make sense to do the same thing for Will Levis and to trust Bill Callahan to nail the second-round tackle for the future?
I wrote about this. That story I told you I just submitted today that's going to post on Monday. And it's easy to draw that correlation, but you have to remember the Bengals – you ever watch a preview of a movie?
Yeah, they saw them play together at LSU.
I got to watch that movie because that preview, it tells me it's going to be good. They saw that already, right? So it's different. And Jamar Chase, I think we're slighting Jamar Chase as far as like how high caliber of a prospect he was. You talk about best wide receivers to come into the league in the last 10 years, you better have Jamar Chase in there. Malik Neighbors is a good prospect, but he's not the prospect. Jamar Chase scored 20. Do you understand he scored 20 touchdowns?
So that 2019 LSU team, I think, is probably one of the best college teams of my lifetime.
Easily.
And I thought that Chase was the best player on that team. And that includes the quarterback that threw for 85 touchdowns that year. The other receiver who might be the best wide receiver right now in the NFL, the running back that went in the first round, the entire offensive line that ended up in the NFL, and then like 7 guys on defense.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's different. It's different. So I look at it from a different perspective.
Texter says, TD, what about drafting a wide receiver at 7 and then trading 38 to try to move back up into the first? The problem is that in order to move back up into the first, you'd probably have to deal your second next year, and now you're going into next year.
A second and a third.
Right.
And you're in trouble.
And I think that's kind of dangerous.
I think you have a better shot at landing an impact receiver at 38 than you do an offensive lineman at 38. You have to look at the depth of the two and the drop-off.
That's what people are saying about the Chargers and why they might take Alt, because they can take receiver at 30. I think they're picking at 37.
But for the Chargers, Trey Pipkins, I mean, this is a third-round pick a few years ago.
Well, and I think he's good.
Yeah, he's solid. He's solid. He's solid enough to make O-line not be a need. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then also you look at right tackle, if you want to still get that right tackle, you could go for Roger Rosengarten, who at Washington, and I've mentioned him multiple times.
Sure.
Everybody points to Fautanu, rightfully so. Penix was left-handed. His blind side and the most important lineman was Roger Rosengarten.
Well, I did a mock draft, TD, on this program, and I actually had Roger Rosengarten go in the first round.
And there are some who have him going first round. You know what I mean? But, again, it goes back to those 50 first-round picks that you have. You know what I mean?
TD, we are 1 week away from the NFL draft. Please tell us about ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. ESPN Bet is ready to take you through all the huge sports moments this spring. It is the exclusive sportsbook of ESPN, and it has it all. That's including offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt, as well as Stephen A. Smith. From the playoff intensity to getting on the links and out to the ballpark, there's simply no better time to be a sports fan than right now. As a new user, you get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. So download ESPN Bet today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, call or text the TN Red Line at 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details, and I will end it with this. Let's go Mets.
There you go. Joe Alt on Talking with TD. I believe it drops tomorrow.
It's live now. We were a day late, but had to because
there you
of Joe
go.
Alt.
TD with Joe Alt Talking with TD. The Preds playoff preview show starts next. Max hops in. Roman Yossi off the top. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. It is the 2024 Nashville Predators playoff preview show. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Max Hers is with us for the 2024 playoff preview show. We now know it'll be the Preds. It'll be Vancouver. When will it be? We don't know. Where will it be? Well, it'll be in Vancouver. We know that. Max will be there with them. By the way, Sunday. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying. Max, good to have you alongside here.
Great to be here.
The Predators are back in the playoffs after a year hiatus, and we're going to start right off the top with the team captain, Roman Josi. Joins us here on the program. So, Roman, first I want to say congratulations. But I want to start with this, which is you've done this a lot. You've been in the playoffs a lot. Philip Forsberg's been in the playoffs a lot. Ryan O'Reilly's been in the playoffs a lot. This Vancouver team has not been in the playoffs as much as you guys have. So knowing what's ahead in the playoffs, how much does that excite you? And how much do you feel like you're already prepared for what should be a very tough playoff series?
Yeah, I mean, I think just playing playoffs in the past, you definitely get some experience for it. There's kind of like different rules in playoffs. It's hectic sometimes. There's a lot of momentum shifts, things. There's a lot of highs and lows, and obviously the atmosphere is different. So I think just, like you said, we have a lot of guys with a lot of playoff experience. We have guys who won Stanley Cups, guys who went very deep on deep runs. So I think that experience will definitely help us.
Roman, Barry Trotz came on the show a couple weeks ago when it looked like you guys were going to make the playoffs, and he said, whatever team we play, whether it's Dallas, whether it's Vancouver, Colorado, Edmonton, whatever, he said, whoever we play is going to have more pressure than we do. He said that, between the Canadian markets and the media that cover them there and everything else, this was a team that had said, hey, we're going to rebuild this thing. We're going to try to get back. Do you as a player look at it? Because in 2017, nobody was thinking at that time this team was going to go to the Cup final. But in 2018, everybody thought this team was going back to the Cup final. And in 2019, you had won the division, and there were the expectations those years. Does it matter once the series starts about, hey, this team has nothing to lose because publicly the betting odds, they're not going to favor us? Does that have anything to do with you guys when you start to prepare and take the ice in this series?
No, not really in the room, to be honest. I think as a team, we believe we can win any series, and I think just the way we played in the last couple, especially the second half, we really found our game. So we truly believe we can beat any team, but we also know how hard it is. And I think, you're right. Like the expectations are definitely a little different than other years. Just like looking back, you remember when we won the President's Trophy, we played that first round against Colorado, and we won it 4-2, and it felt like we didn't win the series because you almost be expected to win, and you expected to almost go 4-1 or whatever. So it's definitely a little bit different going into this series, and we're probably the underdogs for most people, and we've kind of been all year. But we have a lot of faith in our team, a lot of belief, and I think we worked on that really hard to get to that point. So we truly believe we can win any series.
Predators captain Roman Josi is our guest here on the Predators playoff preview show. Roman, it's a unique week. You guys finally know who you're playing. You're getting ready to head to Vancouver over the weekend, but it'll be almost an entire week between games. You had a very long practice yesterday, an off day on Tuesday, an off day today. What do you like about how your team has handled this week, and how do you hope you guys look coming out of it?
It's been good. I think just coming from 82 game season, it's good for us to get some rest. And it's playoffs, so everybody, as soon as that regular season ended, we were kind of waiting on the team we're playing, and everybody's going to be thinking about playoffs the whole week. So I think mentally everybody's preparing, but I think physically it's been really good for us to just get some rest. We'll have some practice time too, work on some things. I feel like the second half of the season we barely practiced because it's just been all games. So that's definitely good for us too. So I think this week definitely benefits us.
Philip Forsberg had a hat trick last Friday to set the Preds franchise goals record, then scored in the last two games. What impressed you most about the way he went wire to wire to lead the Preds franchise with 48 goals this season?
Yeah, he was unbelievable, and like you said, I feel like he's been doing it all year, like on a consistent basis, and yeah, good for him creating that record. I mean, he is the best goal scorer this franchise has ever seen, so it's only fitting that he got that record. And I mean, just the way he's been playing for us, I feel like he's been a force at every game and just kind of taking over games, and not just that, like the way he's been leading the team. And I know, like, we have so many young kids, especially up front, so many young forwards, and he's been an amazing example for them, just the way he's been playing. And it's not just the goals. He's been playing really hard. He's just doing anything for the team to win. And obviously with him, it's a lot of times it's goal scoring, but there's a lot of other things he does, and it's been impressive to watch.
Roman Yossi's with us on the program. So, what do you think your early impressions of Vancouver? I don't know how much, as far as meetings and film study you guys have already done on them, but what do you think when you think about what you guys are going to be dealing with in Vancouver?
Yeah, we haven't done anything yet because we didn't know till yesterday. So I'm sure we'll get to that tomorrow and Saturday. But yeah, we played them early in the year, so I think our team, obviously we were a little bit of a different position, but they're very skilled, very fast. I mean, they won Pacific, which is a really hard division to win. So good defense, big defenseman. So it's gonna be hell of a series. It's gonna be tough.
So I don't want to break any bad news to you, but the way that the awards voting, it seems like nowadays, like, people kind of know who's going to win ahead of the programs and everything else. It seems like Quinn Hughes is probably going to win the Norris Trophy, and you're probably going to finish second. Is there something, knowing that the voting and everything else is going to be over, is there kind of, in your mind, this sense of showing everybody who really might be the best defenseman in the NHL?
No, not really, to be honest. All I want to do is win the series, and that's the main thing. And obviously, he's a big part on that team. So we got to make sure we shut him down. And he's a great defenseman, and he's had an unbelievable year. And I mean, I love watching him play. He's great. He's a great skater. He's great offensively. He makes great plays. So like, he's definitely a big part. So our goal is gonna shut him down, but yeah, it's not really between me and him. It's Preds against Vancouver, and yeah, as long as we get the win, that's all I can ask for.
But you're the better player, right? I'm kidding. Roman Josi with us. So I thought early in the year, I watched you play, and I have a certain. We've been doing this 10 years now, it feels like, and I have a certain expectation level for your play, and I watch it. I'm like, this is fine, but this isn't what, I'm used to seeing out of Roman Josi. And then all of a sudden, right around maybe the All-Star break, it felt like you went back to being the Roman Josi that you have been in the years that you've won the Norris or almost won the Norris. And in fact, maybe even better than that this year. What was it for you that kind of clicked? And then subsequently, what was it for the team that kind of clicked at that point? And are those two things kind of the same?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely go hand in hand. I think every time the team has success, every player has more individual success. And I think early in the year, like, obviously, like, I have a certain expectation to myself too, and I didn't think I had a bad first half of the year. I think there was just some adjustments I needed to make. There was new system, new coach, and everything, and I think I had to change my game a little bit, like make some adjustment in my game, the way I produce, the way I jump up in the play, and I think it just took me a little while to find that consistency, and and then all of a sudden, I think after the All-Star break, we started playing really well as a team, and that's the beauty of hockey, right? Every time your team has success, it's good for every player, and it was good for me, and it was, at times it was also easy playing with Phil and those guys, and so I think those two things definitely go hand in hand.
Last one for you, Roman Josi with us on the program. Roman, you guys have started playoff series on the road before, and you guys have won them. And I do wonder, what is the discussion when you start a playoff series on the road? Like, do you guys talk about, hey, we want to get one here, or, we just want to take it game by game? What is the team's mental approach starting a playoff series on the road, knowing that you're going to be back at home for 3 and 4?
Yeah, I mean, you do take it game by game for sure, but I think we've started at home too, and you started on the road, and it's a different scenario for sure. I think as a home team, you almost expect it to win the first 2 because you're going to go on the road for 2. So the first game of the playoffs is always first 10. We always say that first 10 minutes of the first playoff game or first 10 minutes of the first regular season game are the most intense and fastest 10 minutes in hockey, and it's gonna be intense in game 1. Both teams are gonna come out flying, and things kind of settle in after that. But it's definitely a little bit of a different. Like I said, as a home team, I think there's a little bit of added pressure because you almost expected to win both games, and as a road team, you're kind of playing a little bit more freely because you're going to go home for 2 after.
He is the captain, Roman Josi. Roman, thank you so much, and again, good luck in Vancouver, and we will see you back when you guys take the ice at Bridgestone Arena.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep, Roman Josi, Predators captain, joining us on the Predators playoff preview show. And I should tell everybody, as far as the playoff preview show is concerned, 2 Preds Pride pickup spots tomorrow at Kroger. Swing by Kroger and Brentwood on your lunch from 11 to 1, or after work in Mount Juliet from 5 to 7. And, of course, the Preds will start on the road in Vancouver, so watch party details will be announced as soon as the schedule is confirmed. And go to nationalpredators.com/playoffs, your source for all things playoffs updates. Check out the latest information on watch party, game dates, tickets, community events, and more. I really thought I was going to maybe trick him into answering that one there about who was the better defenseman between him and Quinn Hughes.
You tried, J-Bone. You tried.
So here's my thing. I have no idea, by the way, if he should win the Norris or not, because I don't watch Quinn Hughes. So I would love to be like, he should win the Norris. He should. But I there would be such an uneducated opinion in order to have that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. The voice of the Predators, Pete Weber, will join us at 4:30. Hal Gill will join us later this hour as well. And Andrew Burnett will join us at 5 o'clock on the Predators playoff preview show, which continues next. 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hey, Twice Daily. I love talking about Twice Daily. Twice Daily has your cravings, and you can save on every visit. So stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. Try their new wraps, the Italian, the ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, and the Nashville hot chicken. They're made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. At Twice Daily, it is snack time all the time with your favorites like chicken tenders, tater rounds, and the new pretzels. So get to Twice Daily today. Twice Daily, what are you craving?
Predators lead this one 2-1 as the puck is played across and the shot and the score from the blue line. What a rocket that was at 9:03 to give the Predators a 3-1 lead. Roman Josi, unless it was tipped in front, his second of the game.
I think it might have gone through and left a vapor trail through Grubauer. That was absolutely heated.
There you go. That was during the heater that the Predators went on this year. Max Hers with us for the Preds playoff preview show. So I do, it's crazy that we're sitting here talking about a playoff series versus Vancouver, and the Predators aren't even the last team in. Because I remember going to St. Louis with the team, and I mean, it was kind of one of these things where it was like, hey, either this is going to probably go. They had gotten beat 9-2 by Dallas, and it was like, this probably is not going to go in a very positive direction here. This is probably going to be a lifeless spring where they'll get to the trade deadline, they'll add a couple of second-round picks, kind of like they did last year, and then the rest of the season will just kind of whittle away, and then back to the great hunt for a high-end, top-flight big boy forward. And instead, the team decided just not to lose anymore. Now, after they came off that heater, it wasn't as great. But I do wonder this, which is, what do we make of the fact that the Predators at one point in the season looked to be dead, and instead not only came back, but came back in a big fashion where they beat a lot of playoff caliber teams.
Hot at the right time. That's what it's all about in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Preds finished the season with 20 wins and 3 overtime losses in their last 28 games, which is amazing. Like you said, Jared, considering the caliber of teams they played, considering the caliber of teams they beat, including many on the road, they've proven that they can go toe-to-toe with anybody. And the fact that they didn't play Vancouver through that stretch, and that's who they'll play in the first round, probably a good thing because the Canucks haven't seen it and, I guess, tasted it or felt it in person, what the new look, hot at the right time Preds look like.
Well, I kind of wanted Dallas, though.
I wanted Vancouver.
I wanted Dallas. I wanted Dallas for a couple reasons. Number one, every game in this series is going to start at about 9 o'clock, 9:30, something like that.
They would have
I'm
anyway,
not going to lie.
They would have
Not
anyway.
if it was Dallas. They
Yep.
would have started at 8:30.
You're
they
in
would
the
have one
Western
at 7.
Conference.
Yeah, but sometimes you get 7 o'clock starts. You would have had a 7 o'clock start here or there, and you would have had probably 8:30s, which, there is a difference between 8:30 and 9. But I wanted Dallas because what started all of this was that 9-2 beatdown that Dallas gave you at Bridgestone Arena. And I sat there in that game, and I just had, in the first period, my head in my hands as Dallas unloaded. I think it was 5-0 at the end of the first period that night, and the final we all know was 9-2. And I just felt like Dallas would have looked at a potential playoff series with the Predators and thought, oh, well, we beat them 9-2, and, they're not very good, and we're the best team in the Western Conference. And instead, Vancouver, I just find them to be a huge wild card in all of this. Like, they don't have a lot of experience, but they have a lot of talent. They have a very good coach. There's a lot of things that I worry about with this Vancouver series that with Dallas, like I know, Peter DeBoer's got his moments, both positive and negative, and that Dallas, while they have good players, and a lot of them, they probably don't have like that great player that it feels like Vancouver has.
I think there was a chance against the Stars that the Predators could lose that series in 4 or 5. I don't think there's any chance a Preds-Canucks series doesn't go at least 6. I think it would it be a lower floor? Is that what I'm saying here?
I guess. I just think what's crazy is I don't think anything that's happened up until this point outside of something like that 9-2 victory where it just stays with somebody like, oh, we own these guys, they'll see. I just don't think that like any of that other stuff matters. Like the idea of, well, the Predators, after they went on the run, they didn't play this well, or they did play that well, or, this guy wasn't playing well, and this guy got hot I don't think any of that matters come playoff time because there's going to be enough time off. I know Vancouver plays tonight, but they're going to take a layup tonight. They're going to play on Sunday. We assume. We don't know. We assume. They're going to play on Sunday. And I go back to that Chicago series in 17, and I go back to the Dallas series in 19, which is in the Chicago series, it was like, oh, yeah, Chicago, they're this, they've done that. And the Predators just kind of locked in on game 1. And then they stole game 1, and it was like, okay, now anything else they get was a bonus, and then they got game 2, and now Chicago's on their heels. The Dallas series in 19, the Predators were red hot I mean, red hot at the end of the season. I want to say 8-2-1. They had 100 points. They won the Central Division, and they went out in game 1, and they just didn't show up, and they got spanked. And I think that kind of set the tone for that entire series. So as far as like I can't see any way this doesn't go 6 or 7, I definitely don't feel that way. I absolutely think that like they have to grab one in Vancouver. Be very nice if they took 2. They have to grab one, and then at that point, like it just these series they take on lives of their own, like their own series, and so I can't tell you like, oh yeah, this is gonna go 6 or 7 because I certainly don't feel that way.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You have no idea what to expect, especially against a team like the Canucks, as you said, that could come out at their best or at their worst.
I'm not sure I remember a second of Canucks hockey this year. I tried to watch the other night. I tried when they played Calgary, but the ESPN Plus broadcast, and this might just be me, they feel so hollow. Like those ESPN Plus exclusive games. They feel so hollow that I don't even know if the announcers are at the arena or not. Like, I really don't. TNT, like, that feels like legit, a legit broadcast. ESPN Plus, I don't know what it is, but, like, it was late at night, and I got bored. I couldn't watch it.
Well, the Flames have also been that boring for the last 3 months, so that's part of it, too.
I mean,
that game was 3-0 before I even got to it, I think.
I mean, again, those ESPN Plus broadcasts, they're terrible. Anywho, the voice of the Nashville Predators, Pete Weber, will join us next on the Preds Playoff Preview Show. I believe Pete has called every single Preds playoff game ever, and that will continue when Game 1 rolls around in this Vancouver series, and he will join us next. Here on Stillman and Company, the Preds Playoff Preview Show, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Window Nation. I love Window Nation. Window Nation takes great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. I brought Window Nation out to my home, and they were like, hey, you do not need to replace your windows. I said, you're sure? They said, yes. I said, that's awesome, because what that meant was I knew that if you get the free in-home estimate from Window Nation and you don't need to replace your windows, they will shoot you straight. And far too many people in today's world do not do that. So with April here, your windows could be an issue if they won't open for the fresh air or seal tight to keep out the pollen and bugs. And you know how bad allergies are around here. Talk to Window Nation, because right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 free. And there's no limit on how much you could save. Plus, you could save even more with no interest or payments for 24 months. With proven quality, you'll get affordable windows that meet or beat the national brands. So again, that's 2 windows free for every 2 you buy, no payments, no interest for 24 months. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com. Again, that's 866-90NATION, windownation.com.
As the Predators now 10 seconds left on the power play. Novak scored! Tommy Novak! Beautiful stick handling there. And Tommy Novak wants to make sure you get your dessert tonight.
Okay, so that happened about 10 feet in front of me against Colorado, and I saw it in live time, and I thought to myself, whoa, did that just happen? And I immediately looked up at the Jumbotron. I was like, that absolutely just happened. And that was the game. Barry Trotz came on this show and said that was the game when they beat Colorado on the Saturday night that he said this team was legit. And apparently it was also the game where Colorado said we need to shake up our roster because they did ahead of the trade deadline. Joined now by the voice of the Nashville Predators, Pete Weber, here on the Preds Playoff Preview Show. So, Pete, I want to start with this, which is you've been doing this for a long, long time, and I wonder this specific thing. In all these years of doing it, have you ever seen a year where the team was kind of stuck in one position and went on such a heater that propelled them into it where I think Barry Trotz had a totally different mindset, where I had a different mindset about the team? I don't know about you, but where it's almost like they came out of it a totally different team.
Well, let me tell you how I felt that night walking out of the rink on February 15th after the Stars beat the Predators 9-2. I wasn't thinking very highly that we'd even be in this position right now. To think that they would go on such a heater after such a low point. I mean, that was immediately going from the nadir to the zenith right now. And that's been, and I'm not trying to do any commercials for electronics companies here, but that was just an unthinkable, unfathomable turnaround by the team. And the way they have played now the last several weeks makes you think that they could probably take on anybody.
You know, you bring that up about taking on anybody. I do wonder what your thoughts on Vancouver are, because we had Roman Josi on earlier, and he talked about, they haven't started the film study yet, but this is a very good team. It's a very tough team to play against. We know about the names: Pettersson, Besser, Hughes, Miller. I do wonder what you think of this Vancouver team, knowing that it's been a while since you've seen them in person, but clearly keeping up with them.
Yeah, since before Christmas when we last saw them. And that is what makes them an even greater mystery right now. I mean, they won all three of the games. Only the first of those was really a close game. And 3-2 in that one, where the Predators were at Bridgestone Arena. And they try to come back. Kiefer Sherwood scored late in that game, or late in the second period of that game, and that cut the thing down to 1. But I've watched Vancouver. I'll watch them again tonight. We'll see for how long, since this is as they like to say, a meaningless game. It will take on meaning if there's an injury of any sort tonight. That's to be certain. But I think that the Vancouver Canucks, I thought they were the best team in the league, the 2023 portion of the schedule. There was no question in my mind. Rick Tocchet has done an awful lot with that club since taking over from a guy like as well, Bruce Boudreau. But he has helped turn that club around. And the wild card for them, I with no question, when you get right down to it, is Thatcher Demko, who came back the other night after being out since March the 9th with a knee injury, because Thatcher Demko is like UC Saros. Both of them should be arrested frequently for stealing games, stealing points, however you wish to put it. Demko has been absolutely fantastic, and this goes back several years in the playoffs with him, including in the bubble several years ago.
Voice of the Preds, Pete Weber, is with us here on the Predators Playoff Preview Show. Petey, what sticks with you the most from the Predators-Canucks series in 2011 that the Canucks won in 6 in the second round?
Roberto Luongo being beaten, I believe it was 3 times in that series, from shots behind the end line. They banked him in. Legwand banked one in off his shoulder. Ryan Suter did something similar there. And I think Matt Halashuk, who had the breakaway goal to win one game, I think he had one as well. So it was one of those things where the lesson came true. Put the puck on net and see what happens. It's not a bad play. And that really, I think, reaffirmed that.
Pete, the NHL broadcasters vote for the Jack Adams Award for the NHL Coach of the Year. You've got everybody in the association on speed dial. Feel free to reveal your ballot if you like. I know you haven't had to submit it yet until the end of the season after tonight. But are you getting a sense that Andrew Brunette has a shot at the award here if you've talked to anybody?
I've talked to some people, and I've gotten a sense from some straw polls that have been sent my way that he is in the running without any question, along with Rick Tocchet, to be certain, and maybe Paul Maurice in Florida. I think he's done a heck of a job there taking over that franchise, which really just bowled their way into the Cup final a year ago. And I think bulling the way is the way to put that, because I think of the way that they physically play the game. I think that Andrew has a real legitimate shot at Coach of the Year, yes.
Pete, you've done this before where you've been calling games for teams, especially the early years when the team would make the playoffs and play a Detroit or something like that, where they were massive underdogs, probably didn't have much of a chance to get it out of the first round. And then, of course, you've gone through whether it was the 2016, the Anaheim series, or 2017, or even if you want to go back to 2011, the Anaheim series. I do wonder this. When this team, as far as being an underdog, we know they're going to be an underdog against Vancouver, but how much of an underdog do you really feel like they are?
Because, Jared, of the way they played down the stretch, I don't think that they're a huge underdog at all. And the fact that, and I don't think there's that much importance we can really attach to home ice advantage now, because all the buildings are essentially the same, with the exception of the one the league left last night, and they made that official this afternoon. Mullet Arena is a different animal, to be certain, but we don't have to be concerned about that one anymore. I just think that everybody, you get in there and you take your chances. And if, they don't have the song in Vancouver that they had in Chicago that I was able to wipe from my memory with Pekka Rinne's 2 shutouts at the start of the playoffs in 2017. Didn't have to listen to Chelsea Dagger at all that year. And that would be satisfactory for me to continue with all of this. This has been so much fun watching this club turn things around, watching this team get confidence within itself, which is not an easy thing to do. And I think they have gotten a lot of that going right now. They feel good about themselves, and I think they should heading into this series.
Pete, I think everybody always wants to have one of those high-end great forwards that scores a bunch, that 70 goals with Matthews and McDavid and so on. But Ryan O'Reilly was brought in by Barry Trotz because he was labeled a serial winner. And it was as much about what he would do in the room as he would on the ice. My question to you, though, is as much as those other guys get the hype and they score and everything else, Ryan O'Reilly just happens to beat those kind of players in the playoffs, and it just happens to always be a winner. Now that you've experienced this up close, how much of an impact do you think having a guy like Ryan O'Reilly on this team makes a difference than the teams in the past that haven't had him or a guy like him as their number one center?
I think it has made a difference, number one, in the season Philip Forsberg just had with 49 goals, and number two, with his other line mate, Gus Nyquist, who had a career season also. He has a very great deal of an effect on his teammates. He lifts all of their games, and he is a guy who I was sort of shocked after, I think it was a game in Florida, where on the post-game interview, he said he has never had more fun than he has had with this team this year. And I'm going, that's a pretty good statement for a guy who's been a Conn Smythe Trophy winner as the MVP of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's a great statement to talk about the atmosphere that currently exists and pervades that Predators room.
The voice of the Nashville Predators, Pete Weber's with us on the program. Last one for you, Pete. When it comes to Barry Trotz over the last year, and you've known Barry Trotz for a long time as a coach, when you have seen how he has not only become the lead executive of the franchise, but the success that he has had right away, how surprised or not surprised are you?
I'm not surprised because he has great insight into the human beings who participate in and put on these games. And because of that insight and his faith in that insight, he has put together a team that I think is poised to do some pretty big things right now.
Pete, great stuff as always. We look forward to your calls in Vancouver. We will stay up late. We know you will as well. And we look forward to seeing you back when the team comes back, whenever that is, because we don't know when that will be. Wednesday. We don't know when that will be when the team comes back, but we look forward to it. Good luck, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you very much, my man. We appreciate it. And should you hear me snoring, somebody just text Skillsy and he'll wake me up.
You know what? That's exactly what we're going to do. He will be with us next, and that will be the first thing that we make sure to remind him of. Pete, thank you so much, as always, bud.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, Pete, he is the best. The voice of the Nashville Predators, Pete Weber. Add another playoff series to his resume. And I'm, a little hopeful that it could be, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Here's the thing I'll say about the Stanley Cup playoffs is that I am not one of these just blind faith believers that, anything can happen in the Cup playoffs. Because sometimes there are teams that make it that don't belong, and there are some really good teams that crush the teams that make it that don't belong. Like Roman Yossi on the show earlier today said that they beat Colorado in 18-4-2, and it didn't even feel like they won the series because they should have won that in 4 games. That being said, this is one of the teams, this Predators team, that is, in my opinion, an anything can happen kind of team. And I don't think Vancouver is such a prohibitive favorite that, there's no stopping, no way, no how. So this is one of those ones where I asked Pete, I said, how much of an underdog do you think the Predators are? And he said, honestly, he doesn't think that they're much of one. I don't either. I think this is kind of a 50-50 series. Hal Gill will join us next. And I have got questions for Hal. Do you have questions for Hal?
I know you always do.
Do you have questions for Hal?
Sure.
He's got questions for Hal.
I don't want to take away from yours, though.
We have questions for Hal. We'll do that next. It's the Predators playoff preview show right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Again, go to the Predators website as we are still awaiting when the league will finalize the schedule for the first round of the playoffs against Vancouver, and, of course, when those home games will take place. Also, Andrew Burnett will join us at 5 o'clock, and we do have that pair of tickets, Ian, that we did not give away earlier this week. And I think I have figured out how we are going to give those away, which we will do. We won't give them away later, but we will give you the opportunity to win them later, which I'll probably have to talk some more to Ian about in order to make that a reality. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. The NBA play-in tournament gives teams a chance to play their way into the postseason, so it only seems right that new customers on FanDuel can play their way into $150. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs. So again, I think tonight's like the real elimination, like win or go home, and not that fakakta, if this team wins, they get to play another game, but if this team loses, they lose, whatever. This is real. 3-pointers made in the game. Pick it. Over, under, point totals, first basket score, and more. Go to FanDuel.com/JGM to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over in President Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is now withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. The Predators playoff preview show rolls along on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hal Gill joins us on the program. Hal, let's get right to it. Now that we know it's going to be the Vancouver Canucks, what do we know about the Vancouver Canucks?
Well, they got some young studs. They got some players. The big thing for me, the turning point for them is when they got JT Miller and he started coming to life and kind of changed. I think they kind of had a culture change, and it was triggered around him. I think he's the heart and soul of that team. He plays that grinding game, but he's got the skill to back it up. He's having a great season, and I think look guys like Besser and Pettersson, they kind of followed along. And then on the back end, they have Quinn Hughes. He kind of runs their power play. He can kill penalties. He's actually surprisingly good defensively for a smaller guy. So there's some challenges, and then Demko, I think, is the big equalizer. He's had a great year, and they're trusting big time in him. I will say, I think the Preds, if they can play a 4-line game and really bring the game that they've been bringing for the last 30, 40 games, I think that's going to be the difference maker, because I don't think that Vancouver has that depth. I think they have two really good lines, and I think their Preds are going to have to find a way to match those lines. But the bottom six, if the Preds can play the way they have been recently, I think they can take advantage of that.
What do you make of the discrepancy in playoff experience? Yossi, Forsberg, Saros, O'Reilly, McDonough, those guys have a ton of playoff experience, whereas Vancouver, this kind of feels like their first crack at the dance.
Yeah, it's funny because, everyone talks about what is playoff hockey, and I think when you're younger, it's high energy, exciting. You go crazy out there. You try to hit everything that moves. You're dialed in emotionally. It kind of takes over, and you just go and you play your butt off. As a veteran, I think you realize that it's going to be a hard game, and you have to keep your composure and have poise while you're working your butt off, if that makes sense. I think the separator is that poise, and you look at a guy like McDonough. Obviously he's won cups, but just the way he plays, I don't think I've ever seen him panic. He's just, he's never like, whoops, I'm out of position. He's just very smoothly getting back into position. And he's very confident in the way he can play and the way he can help his team. So I think just that calming presence, not just on the bench and in the locker room, but actually on the ice, I think guys are going to thrive off watching that. And like you said, you got O'Reilly, you got Shen, you got other guys that are going to contribute to the same thing.
On that topic, Hal, what do you think about how the Preds D pairs have come together here? Yossi and McDonough load up together on the top pair, the two best defensemen on the team. Lauzon and Carrier, they speak the same language. They've been together almost the entire season as the second pair. Then the rookie and the vet, Luke Shen and Spencer Stastny, the third pair.
Yeah, it's funny how it's kind of come together, and maybe les deux amis, Lauzon and Carrier, you kind of saw them coming together, and they're inseparable, and they've been awesome together. Obviously, Lauzzi going out there and banging bodies and finishing plays, but I just feel like their gap is awesome. They are able to snuff out plays before they even happen, and so I think Bruno has a ton of faith that they can start in any position, offensively or defensively. And then, Stastny and Shen, Shen is going to be huge in the playoffs where he can lock it down when they need to. It's going to be a battle to get to the interior, and he's going to be the guy that's going to be – it's going to be tough to get through. But I think Stastny is – if his game can grow and we can watch him bloom right in front of us, I think he's got such an upside that he hasn't even tapped into. And I think if he can use his skating, which is going to be huge in the playoffs, I think we're going to be surprised with what he can do. And then, of course, Yossi McDonough, what else do you need to know about that? Everyone knows how good they are. I do think I heard you guys talking to Yost. There's no way he doesn't want to prove that he's the best defenseman in the world. There's no way. I just know he'll never say it because he's such a great guy. But he wants to be the best. He wants to show, and not because he wants to be the best, but he wants to be and what he said is, I want the team to win. Basically what he was saying is, I want to be the best on the best team to prove that I'm the best defenseman. I think that he's got something to prove. And, of course, McDonough, look what he's done. He's done it, great runs in New York and Tampa, and I think he's pretty happy that he's on a team like this, that he can kind of be the spearhead and the big leader that gets it done.
Hal, if the series starts Sunday as expected, and we'll know for sure later tonight, that'd be 5 days in between games for the Preds, with one practice on Wednesday, probably just one more practice other than that one, which would come after arrival in Vancouver. What do you think this week does for the team, positive or negative, with a bit of a layoff?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's funny because you listen to Yossi. He said he hasn't had the meeting yet, and if you guys don't know about the meeting, I can explain that to you later. But usually you go out with that time off. I think you need time away from the rink, because otherwise you just go squirrely in your head thinking about what you are going to do, how are you going to play. Emotionally and mentally, you're already attached to it. I think as soon as you get to the playoffs, you're not thinking about anything else. So I think it's good that they got away from the rink. They had a hard skate and then another day off. So it's kind of keeping with a game rhythm, which is kind of a good way to put it. A day off, game, day off, and then a couple practices, and then you're ready to go. But it's interesting because you can't plan to talk about a team and you don't have, whether you're playing Vancouver or Dallas, you're not going to start the meeting already. And so I think it's really interesting, because now you're going to have that meeting, I assume, in Vancouver. They'll sit down and talk about their game plan and their strategy, and now it'll be fresh in their mind, and they'll be able to maybe avoid the noise in their head for a few days.
Hal Gill on the program with us. Hal, the Predators will win this series if what happens?
I think if they can get their four lines rolling and play consistently and keep these games close I think what Vancouver does, and it may have just been what I saw them do, and I might be off, but they're a momentum team, and when they go and they start buzzing, they get 1, 2, 3 goals, and then they just push teams out, and then they lock it down. I think if the Preds can keep four lines going, and they can battle and compete and keep it till the third period, I think their four lines rolling is going to wear teams down. I think they're going to wear defenses down, and Vancouver has a good mix of smaller skill guys and big defensemen, but I think I'm thinking they can wear them down, and third periods have been great lately because of that for the Preds, and I think that's what might be able to get them over the top.
Hal, great stuff as always. We look forward to your call in Vancouver with the voice of the Predators, Pete Weber. Hal, safe travels.
Thank you. It's playoff time. Enjoy it.
Absolutely. Coach Andrew Burnett will join us next. And now we know who the opponent is. So what does he think about the Vancouver Canucks? We will do that next year on the Preds Playoff Preview Show on Stillman and Company. Hey, let's talk about the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Fellas, you have put this off for way too long. It's time to get it done and move forward with your sex life, and the Tennessee Men's Clinic is the leader in bedroom confidence. The reality is pills often quit working, and guys start making excuses for not coming to bed. Did you know that studies show that men will be more irritable and argumentative before bed just to avoid failing at intimacy? And many of you hate going to the doctor, but the Tennessee Men's Clinic was created in 2014 to take care of guys just like you. For a decade, the urologists and providers at the Tennessee Men's Clinic have helped guys with ED, weight loss, and they even now offer aesthetic enhancements and cosmetic procedures. Their ED and weight loss treatments truly change lives, and with no surgery, they are seeing success rates as high as 90%. They specialize in seeing guys who think they're out of luck regain hope that they can be successful in the bedroom and beyond. They even offer same-day or next-day appointments. So it's time to feel amazing and hit your goals this year. Stop thinking about it and call the Tennessee Men's Clinic today at 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090, or go online to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com to book an appointment today. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. The 2024 Predators playoff preview show on Stillman and Company. Stillman and Company live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. The Predators are set to take on the Vancouver Canucks in round one of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we are joined now by Predators head coach Andrew Burnett here on the program. As we start off, Coach, first of all, congratulations on making the playoffs. I'm sure coming into the year, many did not pick you to do so, but here you guys find yourself. It really feels like for the last 2 weeks, you guys have found yourself in the playoffs, just waiting to know who, when and where, and we know the where and the who now, but maybe not so much the when, but congratulations, Coach.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's been a grind, but it was, we obviously to get in is always your first goal of every season, and to get in and give ourselves a chance is pretty exciting.
So I want to start with this. Barry said that head coaches will never say whenever there's we could play this team or we could play that team, which team they want to play. And so I know that before yesterday, you probably would at least have said publicly that you were doing all your homework on every possible playoff opponent. Now that we know that it's going to be Vancouver, how much prep did you do before last night on Vancouver, and how much prep have you done on Vancouver since last night?
Well, I think, twofold question. I think we were prepared for, especially after Edmonton lost to Vancouver on Saturday, it sounded like Vancouver or Dallas. So I think we prepped for both teams. Obviously not going overboard, but being familiar, especially with Vancouver, where we haven't seen them a whole lot since, I can't remember, it was game 15 or something, or 16, or anyways, early in the season. So we weren't quite as familiar with them. With Dallas, we played them 4 times there in about a month and a half, 2 months. So we were a little bit, feel a little bit more comfortable exactly what they're doing. And again, like I said, Vancouver is a little while ago. So we probably prepped a little bit more for Vancouver, obviously ready for Dallas. And then you watch the game, although I fell asleep last night, and you wake up early this morning, and today's been kind of a full day of Vancouver and, an exhaustive process here.
So what have we seen so far on the Canucks, Coach?
Well, they're a really good team. Obviously, lots of skill up front, really good power play. The penalty killing's been good. They've got really good goaltending now. DeSmith was good, but Demko is, one of the elite in the league, especially early in the year. I really thought he drove their team. They got some special players in Pettersson and Miller and Quinn Hughes. And so they got a little everything. And, Talk's done a really good job of that group. They play 4 lines. They play fast, kind of similar to the way we play. So it's gonna be a fun, exciting time here.
So Andrew Burnett's our guest, Predators head coach. When you look at Vancouver, you watch the tape, is there anything that you write down and say, okay, this is an advantage that we feel like the Predators will have going into this series? And if so, kind of what do you think you guys can do maybe to take advantage of maybe a weakness in Vancouver's game?
Well, I think right now I'm just in the process of seeing what they do, and what they do really well is kind of how I usually start things. And then I look for ways to exploit them in different ways. They've been really good in their own zone. They got big defensemen that box you. We're going to have to really get inside. I know it's a recurring theme we say all the time. But for our group, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for sure. And, some of the things we do well fits into the things they do well. So I think it's looking for holes. I'm going to bit by bit here, probably tomorrow, start turning the page and looking for how to exploit them. Today, it's just getting familiar with their game, and their game's pretty tight. And it's going to be, like I said, it's be hard to get inside. They handle the rush pretty good, and obviously with their goaltending. So, this time of year, teams are.
Burnett is our guest here on the Preds playoff preview show. Bruno, you've got 7 players who are expected to play in Game 1 who have either never played a playoff game before or really only played a handful in the NHL. Is there anything that you, your staff, or the veteran players on this team will tell them to get them ready, or you kind of want them to just learn by doing it?
Yeah, I think you probably get a little bit from obviously being around a group that's been some long runs, the O'Reillys, the McDonoughs, the Shens, the Yossi's, the Forsbergs. They've been to finals. They've been in those big games, Gus, Nyquist. So I think they can help. and as a coaching staff, we can help. And until you really go through it and experience it, it is a different level. The one thing I at least rest my head on my pillow a little bit is we've kind of been in these situations. Now this is going to be a totally different ball game, but we've been playing kind of playoff type hockey, playoff type atmosphere for a while here now. And hopefully we understand it and treat it. It's not just another game, but really at the end of the day and being in enough games and playing them and coaching them, it ends up being just a game. Just the intensity's another level or two higher than you're used to. And once you get used to that, you'll be okay and not to be overwhelmed and just try to stay in the moment and enjoy it. It's going to be hard, but I'm hoping, like I said, I feel a little bit better. We've been going through it here for the last little while.
You've said all season, and you just mentioned it there, you want your players to play with joy, and that joy will lead to wins. Where does the joy come in the grind of the playoffs?
Well, I think the joy comes with the camaraderie. When a group at this time of the year, just like our group, I feel especially that we're enjoying each other, and we've been selfless to I'm not going to say to a fault, but we've been really selfless where everybody's excited regardless who scores. I mean, if you watch our bench, when it doesn't matter who scores, you see joy. When you come to practice and watch us work hard and watch us battle and watch us enjoy each other and go hard, I see joy. So this group's been really, really dialed in, really close, and they're growing. I mean, I think I've been saying this all year. Like, seems like every game we're a little tighter, we're a little closer, we're having a little bit more fun. We're enjoying the big moments. We're enjoying the moments that maybe didn't get the result we wanted, but we enjoyed going back to work and going back at them. And that kind of defines that relentless word we've been using. And that's been that group. And there's joy in relentlessness and there's joy in compete. And they've exemplified that here through the stretch.
Head coach Andrew Burnett is with us on the program. Coach, everybody talks about playoff experience and who has it and who doesn't. But you have playoff experience now as a head coach with your experience in Florida. Was there something that you wish that you knew going into the series in Florida, going into your playoff year there as the interim coach, that you now feel like you have that you're going to apply into this playoff series and this playoff run?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously you're always learning. There's things you can do better. Self-reflection is hard, not always fair at different times. But, yeah, definitely there's a few things that I think I could have did better. And I'm very mindful, and I'll probably keep that to myself in what I need to do. But yes, I learned some things. It was a totally different situation where we were a favorite, and obviously we won the President's Trophy, and I think a lot of pressure comes along on that. And then there's also a lot of things that you did all year that maybe when I look back at it, maybe not that it was slipping, but maybe some adjustments need to be made in personnel and the way we play. Maybe there need to be a little bit more patience in certain parts. There should have been maybe less patience, for example, in the power play and some things like that, that I probably could have jumped on that a little earlier. But hindsight's 20/20. But I think, again, you learn. Every team's different. You no matter what's happened to the past, it's what the team you have now. And it's how you adjust to your group, the group you have now, not the group you had before, but today's group. And I'm mindful of that. You wake up every night at 2, 3 in the morning, and you wake up in the morning and you're thinking about all 23 guys and what could I do to get them better, and are they on top of their game? And they're all different. Every player is a little bit different. How do I get the best of them? So that's where that is. But I definitely learned a lot. You learn a lot through the course of this season. And hopefully, like I said, a little bit of experience I had before, I'll be a little bit maybe more comfortable in certain situations.
What do you make of the fact that by being the underdog technically in this, or being the road team in this playoff series, you guys only had to take one in Vancouver in order to get home ice in your favor? When you think about the experience you've had at Bridgestone Arena this year, kind of how much does it excite you about, hey, if you can get one of these games in Vancouver, you're going to have the shot to win the series at Bridgestone Arena? How does that kind of maybe, I'll say motivate, but certainly how does that play into your mind strategically about what you have at home?
Well, we're delighted and excited and very grateful for what we have at home. I think that the fans rally behind us. I thought the players, and I'll take part of the blame, probably put a little bit too much pressure on us early to to be a really good home team, because I know how these fans can turn games around and could push it to levels that maybe you don't think you can reach. And we didn't play particularly well at home, so it was hard to really feel that home ice feeling, and when Bridgestone really gets going, and how special the place is, and how, like I said, they could push you to heights you never thought you can hit. I thought down that stretch, every game it felt a little louder. Every game I felt it really energized our group. So I think our group really fed off that. And for me, yeah, I think you always you want to go to Vancouver. There, you can't say there's no pressure, because there's always pressure, but you want to go play your best game, and knowing you're always going to come home and you have an opportunity to win some games here with our fans and our building and how it rocks. So yes, love to get two. But I think for us, and this has been an important thing for us, is that we really just kept our mindset of just worrying about ourselves and just put our best foot forward, just play our game. And when we do that, we get results, and we don't look too far ahead and we don't look too far behind. We've been staying in the moment. We look straight ahead, and it's never going to be more important through a playoff series. And it'll never be more important starting either Sunday or Monday.
Bruno, what pleases you the most about the way your lines and D pairs have fallen into place here?
Yeah, I think through the course of that stretch of games, I thought our lines got solidified. There was a lot of moving pieces there for the first 40 games or so, trying to find those combinations. And I thought we had some guys that really stepped up, and we got some secondary scoring, which we didn't get a little bit earlier in the year. And guys are feeling better about their game. Confidence grew. A guy like Luke Evangelista's games is at the best it's been all year. Same with Tommy Novak. And then our fourth line, our identity line's been unbelievable every night, and obviously the big line contributes nightly. They're always there. And then with Sis and Jason Zucker and Janko, I really like their game of late. They've created, they've been responsible defensively. They maybe don't always get rewarded, but I think they're on the brink of getting going. So yeah, the combinations have been really good up front. On the back end, I think Yost and McDonough have a really good opportunity to be a pretty special pairing. And then Lowe's and Carr have been rock solid, kind of the backbone back there all year. And I think with Schenner and Stas, I think, there's a good combination of veteran leadership, some heaviness, some toughness, and then really good mobility with Stas as a young player being able to play with a veteran. I think it's been a really good fit. And everybody that's come in, as Cody Glass, it's some big games for us. It's going to take not just, we all know what happens in playoffs. It's going to take all the guys, coming. Dante Fabro had a really good stretch of games. Tyson had a really good stretch. Jared Anderson-Dolan, we're just trying to get to know, but I liked his game. So it's going to take everybody at different times. And again, with our group, we're going to rely, and we're going to need them all.
Last one for you. Andrew Burnett's is our guest, the head coach of the Predators on the Predators Playoff Preview Show. So, this was sent in by a fan, which I think was a question for us, but I'm going to ask it to you since you're the head coach. The question comes from the Animal season ticket holder. One big fan says, winning against some of the bigger teams in the regular season was thanks to an aggressive forecheck. How much emphasis will be put on that during the playoffs, and how effective can it be?
Well, I think that is our identity. When you talk about relentlessness, I think our forecheck and our hounding of pucks is kind of what lets us have the puck a little bit more and create a little bit more offensively and play in their zone a little bit more than we play in our zone. So I think it's going to be really important for our group. I think if you look at our identity line with the Big Sexy and Sherwood and Smith, they're, if not one of the top 5 or 6 best forechecking groups, and they kind of they stir the drink for us a little bit early. And everybody seems to buy in, and we kind of get that. It's going to be crucial. They got mobile D, but I think with some of their bigger D, if we can make them turn, the more we can make them turn, the more we can pressure, the more we'll have the puck. And the more we have the puck, the more fun it is to play.
Coach, thank you very much for your time. Good luck this week as you guys head out to Vancouver to take on the Canucks next week. And you said that you haven't found the weaknesses yet of Vancouver, so I wish you luck tonight in your film study of finding those.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, guys. Anytime.
Yep.
Thanks,
Andrew
Bruno.
Burnett, head coach of the Nashville Predators, joining us on the Predators Playoff Preview Show. I think he's probably found some of the weaknesses in Vancouver's game. I was wondering how he was going to answer that, by the way. If he was going to be like, well, we try to keep that internal and we try to, or instead, an unbelievably politically correct, way of not revealing anything. Just bravo.
What if he was just like, yeah, low blocker on Demko?
Well, he may not win the Jack Adams Award, but he may win an Emmy or an Oscar for that answering of that question right there. We continue along. It is the Predators playoff preview show. Max Hers is with us here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Novak, little hesitation move, got around Marchenko. Into the zone, left wing side. Evangelista to the right circle. Novak dragging, going to the net, and he scores! Excuse me, Roman Josi with the score, and the Predators now lead by 4.
That was from the home season finale, the homecoming game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. I said to somebody ago, the season finale at home was basically like that when Georgia schedules Vanderbilt on homecoming and then just beats crap out of them. That was what that was.
Bama senior day against UT Chat.
Yeah. They just, Columbus didn't want to be there. They were so Cancun on 3. It was unbelievable that night. I do wonder this, Max Hers, as we have the Predators playoff preview show continuing on here. When you look at the matchup against Vancouver, I asked Andrew Burnett, I said, where do you see a potential weakness against Vancouver? And he said, well, I just got started on them, so I'm going to try my darndest to find these weaknesses. And so maybe there will be some things we can take advantage of, but we really got to dive in before we can find those things out. And I kind of chuckled, and he kind of chuckled, and you kind of chuckled. Where do you see the advantages for the Predators?
It's interesting because I don't think the Canucks are really that far ahead of the Preds in terms of personnel, despite the fact that this is the 2-7 series in the conference. But I don't know if there's any area where I would say the Predators are necessarily closest. I think the thing I'm most looking forward to seeing, and you can't do it as much in the road games, but how the Predators attack line matching and who goes against the two big lines for the Canucks, which is the Elias Pettersson line. He's the best player, top line center, but the best line is probably the second line with JT Miller, the breakout, overperformed player of the year, who'd been great before, but man, has he been unbelievable for the Canucks this year. JT Miller with Brock Besser and Pius Suter. It'll be interesting to see if that's an assignment for the Sissons line, or maybe even the fourth line will get a lot of looks against them. I mean, it'll be by committee on the road games because you just can't line match in road games with last change. But that's the thing I'll be watching the most, and what that sets up is who the Predators get their top line out against. And I think if they can get Forsberg, Nyquist, O'Reilly out there against either of the third or fourth lines for the Canucks, even though the third line has Elias Lindholm now, who they got from the Flames, he hadn't really been that good there. So I think if the matchups go right, the Predators' top line could see some better matchups.
Do you think if we take out the first part of the season, because that was so long ago, and we really focus on, January 1st on, is it crazy to say that Vancouver really hasn't been great, and the Predators have certainly played at a much better pace?
It's not crazy at all. The Predators have been the better team over, really anywhere you start after New Year's, which is wild to think about because the Canucks did well enough to win the division with the Oilers in it. Like, that is not easy to do. But the numbers at the beginning of the season were just so interesting for the Canucks because they were dominating. But it was like BABIP in baseball. Their PDO was through the roof. It's like they're getting unbelievably
What is
lucky.
PDO?
It's a measurement that tracks like basically how many goals you're scoring versus where you're shooting from and whether you're getting more than what you deserve. So at the beginning of the season, all of the people who look at that, and I'm not really someone who looks at that, but it was like a big joke with all the NHL Twitter people like, oh, the Canucks are going to come crashing down. And they never came crashing down because, again, they beat Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl for the division, but they were not as good as they were at the beginning. So I think what you're saying is completely fair.
Ian, are you aware of the PDO?
Not really, no.
I mean, here we are doing a 4-hour talk show every day, and we are unaware of the PDO.
Mm-hmm.
We need to spend some more time focusing on the PDO here on this program.
I do love this show, by the way. It's an honor to be on.
What is the Predators' PDO?
Doesn't really matter.
I mean, if we're going to PDO, we need to PDO. I mean, I wish I had known about this. I would have asked Andrew Burnett when he came on. How important is the PDO in games 1 and 2 on the road at Vancouver? Very important? Not very important?
Not very important.
Well, it is what it is. Okay, so I don't really know much about the Vancouver Canucks other than what you guys have all told me. So Randeep Janta is going to join us next. He is the color analyst for the Vancouver Canucks. We'll get his thoughts on kind of what they're thinking about the Predators. And we'll do that next. Here it is, the Predators playoff preview show on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The Nashville Predators take on the Vancouver Canucks in the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. And again, Preds Pride Day is coming up. Even though we don't know exactly when this playoff series will start, though my gut tells me it'll be Sunday. That's just my gut. That tomorrow there will be 2 Preds Pride pickups tomorrow at Kroger. Swing by Kroger in Brentwood on your lunch from 11 to 1 or after work in Mount Juliet from 5 to 7. And, of course, go to Predators.com/playoffs for – did I say playoffs? Playoffs. Predators.com/playoffs for your source for tickets, watch parties, info, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to lie. I don't know much about the Vancouver Canucks. I don't. They haven't played the Predators in forever, and I will know after game 1 probably everything there is to know. I'll be like an expert, like these NCAA tournament people that fill out a bracket, don't know anything about any team, and after the first weekend think they know everything. That's how I will be. But for more info, we go to Randeep Janta, who is the color analyst for the Vancouver Canucks and joins us now on the Predators Playoff Preview Show. So I want to start with this right here, Randeep, which is, how did the people of Vancouver feel when it became official last night that it would, in fact, be the Nashville Predators that the Canucks were drawing in round 1?
Hey, good to join you guys. But first of all, it was, a situation where the Vancouver Canucks haven't been to the playoffs in a long time. So this fan base, first of all, it was just jubilation because it's been a couple of years of pain. But when it comes to the Predators, okay, this is the dilemma that the Canucks fans, like any other fan base, had in the Western Conference. You're running into a good team, whoever you play, but those games early on in the season that Vancouver did play against Nashville, they feel good about them, right? That's an opposition where you did the season sweep. So rather than playing a Vegas, you feel good about playing Nashville better. I don't think that's nobody's thinking this is an easy series. It's going to go a long way probably, but that Predators team that the Vancouver Canucks saw earlier in the year, it was a very different team. So I want to say, Canucks fans are cautiously optimistic, but pick your poison, right? All the teams that they could have played were going to be difficult.
So I have Barry Trotz on the show every week, and maybe it was last week, I can't remember, but we were talking about the playoffs, and Barry took a very odd tone talking about expectations and pressure, and he said whoever the Predators draw, that team is going to have more pressure on them to win, he said, than we are, because he said that, hey, nobody thought the Predators were going to make the playoffs going into the year. And he said Dallas, they're going to be the number 1 seed in the West, so everyone's going to expect them to win. And then when it comes, he said, the Canadian markets, they are so much tougher. The expectations are so much higher there, to which I told Barry Trotz, I said, Barry, I'll ramp the pressure up on you if you'd like here on the program. But, as far as the pressure is concerned, is there a sense in Vancouver of, hey, it's nice to make the playoffs, but this is a team that finished in a spot to where they should win in the playoffs? And what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation in Vancouver because at the beginning of the year, if you'd asked Canucks fans and people that cover this team, what's this team going to do? Forget the fans and the broadcasters. It was Jim Rutherford, who's the president of hockey operations. He said, if everything goes right, we're a playoff team. And this team really smashed through that. They were atop of the Pacific Division for a majority of the season. They were on top of the Western Conference for over 70-plus days. So I think there has been a moving goalpost. At the beginning of the year, it was make the playoffs and you get in. And now they've shown that they can, hang with the big boys. They've had some of the best stretch of hockey this season and been one of the more consistent teams. There is an expectation, of course, anytime you play for a Canadian team, that you're going to win, that there's this this curse of not winning a Stanley Cup that goes back to 1993 with the Montreal Canadiens. Rick Tocchet mentioned that yesterday to say that's an added pressure. But when you're on that ice, when you're already in the playoffs and you're feeling that pressure of the playoffs, that's something that, the pressure is going to be there regardless. But there is a changing of expectations in Vancouver to say, okay, we're just happy to be here. Maybe if you would have thought about that in October, it was a very, great situation if you just make the playoffs. Now, this team has essentially shown that they can do more, and that's why Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin went after Elias Lindholm. That's why they picked up Nikita Zadorov. That's why they added to this roster during the season where, some of the star players, the depth players on this team did show that they're potentially capable of more. So is there pressure? Yeah, holding a Canadian passport and playing hockey in this country, there's added pressure. But on top of that, I should mention, guys, the majority of this team is U.S.-born players. So even though it's a team in Canada, This is a very American team.
Randeep Janda is our guest. He's the Canucks radio color analyst, getting you ready for the Preds and Canucks playoff series starting this weekend in Vancouver. Randeep, you mentioned the additions. The big one was Elias Lindholm, coming from the Flames, coming from a division rival. First big move of trade deadline season. Preds have not played the Canucks since Lindholm was acquired. Only 11 points for him in 25 games. Was he solid? Has he done what he was traded to do at all, or not as much?
So it started off great. He had 2 power play goals against Carolina in the first game outside of the All-Star break, where it was that weekend that he was traded to the Vancouver Canucks. But since then, it's been, a lot of up and down. And the positive with Elias Lindholm has been that, he has, despite some injuries, he has been, pretty solid defensively. And what he gives them is a really solid spine at the center position. So it's JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, and essentially Lindholm is playing on a third line with Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland. That's a pretty good third line. Offensively, he hasn't had that touch yet, and I mentioned, he has had injuries. He was shut down for a few games a couple of weeks ago. He just recently made his return back to the lineup. So with Lindholm, I think when they traded for him, and I talked to Rick Tocchet about this at the All-Star break, he liked the fact that he's a hybrid player. He can play on the wing, he can play down the middle, but the idea was that he'd play next to Elias Pettersson. They didn't really jive in that position, so what they've had to do is now play him down the middle of the ice, and that does come with a benefit. That Dakota Joshua, Connor Garland line is a really strong line. They've got an aggressive forecheck. They've been able to score quite a bit, and with Lindholm, they've had a small cameo thus far, but Lindholm is solid defensively, so that potentially gives them a shutdown line that might free up some decent opportunities for a JT Miller or an Elias Pettersson that might not have to do the heavy lifting if Lindholm, Garland, and Joshua can work together. But Lindholm offensively hasn't been there, but defensively he's been rock solid.
In goal for the Canucks, Thatcher Demko has finally realized his potential, having a career year this year. He missed the last month, got injured in early March, came back, played and won in what seemed like a pretty easy win Tuesday night against the Flames. Still one more regular season game tonight, and he'll play it against the Jets, even though that game doesn't really have any meaning with it. What's the latest on his health? Any concerns about him either not being at full health or maybe being rusty off the injury going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about rust with Thatcher Demko. He made 39 saves, and mind you, the team did a great job in front of him, limiting second chances, boxing out really well, and keeping a lot to the perimeter. But Thatcher Demko had to make 2 or 3 maybe saves in that game that were grade A's on Pospisil and Nazem Kadri. And really, guys, he was locked in. This is a guy that since he was drafted by the Vancouver Canucks, one of his biggest assets is, of course, he's a physical freak. He's one of the better goaltenders in the league. But mentally, he's extremely strong. He's a very focused individual. And he was talking about last week where, he was pushing the training staff to up their game, essentially, to say, hey, I'm going to be aggressive with my comeback, and I want to be making sure that I'm ready to go. I don't want any rust on me. So that's a credit to what kind of goaltender he is. And he's really a game changer for this team. They're much better defensively than they were last year. Last couple of years, it was a horror show when it came to defense in Vancouver. The Canucks have gotten better at that front, but you still need some big saves from your star goaltender, and Demko's been able to do that. I don't think there's any worries in terms of the injury per se. It's just more of, all right, against Calgary, he played well. Against a team like Winnipeg, you want him in the crease just so he can get some activity, get into that rhythm again. And when he plays Nashville, hopefully, for Canucks fans, it's a player that's locked in, ready to go. But guys, there's a number of matchups in this series that excite me. Of course, Saros versus Demko is one of them. You've got 2 all-star level goaltenders. Both have been in the Vezina discussion in previous years. So, Thatcher Demko is going to have to be on his game if Saros is playing on the other side of the rink.
Randeep Janta is our guest. He is the Vancouver Canucks color analyst. Speaking of those matchups, Quinn Hughes versus Yossi, as far as the Norris Trophy is concerned, we had Yossi on the show earlier today. I said, it's going to go to Quinn Hughes. And I asked if there was any added motivation for that. He said no. Then Hal Gill came on the show later, and he said yes, speaking for Yossi. So I do wonder this, when I don't watch a lot of Vancouver Canucks, so I don't see a lot of Quinn Hughes. But I do wonder is this a kind of measuring stick matchup here for Quinn Hughes, knowing that he's the younger guy and Yossi is an established perennial Norris Trophy contender?
Oh, totally it is. And Quinn Hughes, the way he is wired, guys, he's a very goal-focused individual. And, with Roman Josi specifically, Quinn Hughes, excellent playmaker. You look at the 74 assists he has this year, and that goes back a couple of years. Even as draft year, we understood he was a great skater and an excellent passer. But one of the areas that he had to focus on this season was, I want to get my shots up. I see what Roman Josi does. I want to get my shots and my goals up. Like he made that a target. He mentioned Roman Josi by name. So Quinn Hughes is looking around the league to say, those guys do it really well. I want to hit that level. And 91 points. He's had 22 multi-point games this year. He's had 11 three-point games. Like, this is a guy offensively has got it for a long time, but he's really ramped it up to another level. And defensively, much better than he was a couple of years ago. He had a pretty significant, pretty bad plus-minus a couple of years ago, and he took that personally. That was one of the things he worked on. He became, much better defensively. So with Quinn Hughes, he's a very competitive person, but he's now also the captain of this team. He understands he has to really push his team up the mountain, so to speak. So that matchup of one-on-one with Roman Josi, Quinn might not say it, Roman Josi might not say it, but, the best in any business, they do look across the street to say, how's that guy doing? And I think with Quinn Hughes, there's no doubt when he's already mentioned that, I got to get my shots up like Roman Josi. He's looking across the league. He's looking across the locker room and down the hallway to say, of course, there's that competitive spirit.
Last one for you. So I asked Andrew Burnett earlier today on the show. I said, now that you've studied the film of Vancouver, are there any weaknesses that you see that maybe you can take advantage of? And his response was that he's just gotten started watching the film, so he hasn't gotten there yet as far as the weaknesses are concerned. And then I told him when we ended the conversation, I said, good luck finding the weaknesses. I know what the weaknesses of the Predators are. I mean, I know that I'm afraid that the Predators might have, once it becomes, the big boy playoff hockey, that the Predators might have one line that can score. What is, if there were to be something about the Canucks that you would say this is something the team really wants to make sure that they shore up ahead of this playoff series, what would it be?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I would highlight. And I wouldn't necessarily say a weakness, but to me, an X factor for the Vancouver Canucks moving forward here is Elias Pettersson. He's a guy that, of course, has put up his 89 points, but at the beginning of the season, guys, he looked like he was going to be a 120-point player, 130-point player. That's how much he was producing. He hasn't done that. So when you have JT Miller driving his line, putting up nearly 40 goals, putting up over 100 points, and just a physical presence, and, that's another matchup I'm looking at Philip Forsberg and JT Miller, just two of the best power forwards in the game. He's going to do his job on a line. Lindholm does play that kind of that shutdown role on the third line. You're okay with that matchup as well. With Elias Pettersson, he's been playing alongside Niels Höglander and Ilya Mikheyev, and it's just been hot and cold. And even though he picked up an assist in the last game, he's picking up points here or there. He's not shooting very much. If you get Elias Pettersson at his absolute best, he is one of the best players in the NHL. However, if you're able to get 60% from him, that can change a series. That 1-2 punch of JT Miller and Elias Pettersson is very important for this team to have success. So I think the X factor for me for the Canucks is something they need more of is Elias Pettersson at his best. This is a good team, but, that ceiling, are you able to hit it without Pettersson being that guy? And the other aspect I would say is the power play. This is a 10th overall power play in the NHL. If you start looking at the players that they have on the power play, they should probably be a top 5 power play. So it's kind of gone stale at times in the playoffs, especially early on in the playoffs. Game 1 and 2, we know the referees are very, very happy blowing that whistle. Can you take advantage of that? And if they can't, that can swing the momentum to Nashville, and maybe that gives them a little opportunity, maybe a little bit of life in the game. So I'd look at the power play and Elias Pettersson.
Randeep Janta is the color analyst for the Vancouver Canucks Radio Network. Randeep, excellent insight. Thank you so much. We look forward to the series. I know you got one more to call, but we look forward to the series and are really excited about what's next.
Yeah, great to join you guys. And it's a little episode of Know Thy Enemy, I guess, right? So I'm sure we'll keep in touch in the future as well.
Absolutely. Randeep, thank you so much.
Take care.
Yep. Randeep Janta, he is the color analyst of the Vancouver Canucks. Again, said the power play, 10th in the league, should be top 5. I'm a little worried about the Predators' power play. And then he said Pedersen. I wonder if Pedersen, look, you know how I am about pay what you owe. I wonder if it sounds like he was lighting it up, signed that contract, and then all of a sudden wasn't lighting it up.
Yeah, he had that hat trick against the Preds back in October on Halloween night.
I worry about Vancouver's power play.
You do?
Oh, yeah. The Vancouver power play has crushed the Preds over the past couple of years.
You know what? I think I remember that. I think I remember I was at a
last
concert.
season.
I want to say I was at a concert. It could have been last year. It could have been the year before. I can't remember. I think Hines was the coach. And I think it was something where the Predators were up 1-0, and then all of a sudden they were down 4-1, and they allowed 3 straight power play goals. Or something crazy like that. Who knows?
I think what Andrew Brunette said, too, he wants the team, and Hal Gill said this, too. I mean, you got to roll 4 lines. If they're just rolling the 4 lines over and over, playing even strength, not a lot of stoppages, I think that favors the Preds.
So I have a thought on that I want to pick up as we round out the Predators playoff preview show on Stillman and Company. 102.5, 106 for the game. The Predators playoff preview show rolls along. We do not know when the Predators will play game 1, but my gut tells me it will be on Sunday. Max Hers.
Hey, I've followed your gut a lot of places.
There you go. My gut tells me it'll be Sunday. Now, let me say this. We talked about, Hal Gill said they need to roll 4 lines, and Bruno said whatever. Here's my thing. The Predators are going to win this series. If they win game 1, which I'm not sure they will, but I think they'll win the series if they win game 1. And the second thing is they'll win the series if this happens. If the secondary scoring shows up, so if Tommy Novak shows up, if, that line, with Sherwood and Cole Smith, if those guys pop in a couple, my guy, Jankowski, if he, pots 1 or 2 in, they're going to win the series. If the Predators have to rely on Nyquist, O'Reilly, Forsberg, Yossi, they are not going to win this series if they have to rely on those guys alone.
Or they're going to have to win 1-0.
Either that. I think Saros will be fine. I think he'll probably steal a game, maybe 1. You can't expect him to steal more than 2. I think he'll steal a game in the series. Saros will give you a chance to win. He won't win you every game, but he'll give you a chance to win. And I think your top line will be okay. But if these other guys, if Tommy Novak turns into a pumpkin, you're going to lose. And then if these guys show up and they put the puck in the net, you're going to win this thing in 5. Because I think, again, you win game 1, then all the pressure's on Vancouver in game 2, and you might be able to squeak that out some way, somehow. You go up 2-0, you're going to win the series because you're going to win a game at Bridgestone Arena. So I am of the mindset that that's what it's going to take. And I think those are the 2 things that are most important to me. Win game 1, and the secondary scorers, the guys that are now getting some contracts over there. McCarron got a contract. Cole Smith got a contract. Jankowski got a contract. Novak got a contract. Those guys score. Zucker is capable of scoring in the playoffs. If those guys score, they're going to win.
Yeah. Zucker was going to be the one I named, and also a little maybe revenge factor for Anthony Beauvillier.
No.
Started the season out there.
No. Beauvillier. He's trying the best he can. We're proud of him. But as far as expecting him to score, I don't feel very confident about that. That's it for us. Okay, so Vandy Baseball's been running on 94.9. That will be flipped over here to 102.5 against Florida.
Go Doors.
And then the Sounds will be on 94.9 after that. Stillman and Company. Max, thanks for stopping by for the
My pleasure.
Predators playoff preview show. Stillman and Company will be back tomorrow at 2.